Oh, hey. What is up, everybody? Oh, like one person. Oh, boy. It is definitely Saturday night. It is cold. It is snowing. And it is, I got nothing going on. I got everything I needed to get done today, and I'm sitting around. What's up, Sunset? Cool. We do a lot of deep dive, Sunset. Which ones have you been enjoying? Oh, yeah, is that tomorrow? That tells you how much I actually, now that you mention it, I normally have a anti Super Bowl Sunday party. Usually. So maybe I have to do that tomorrow. It's not too bad. I mean, we've had a lot, but not this week. It's just been really, really, really cold this week. No, World of Darkness is not a game, system, engine, world, lore that I have any interest in exploring or playing. I played a little bit of vampire, werewolf, and hunter in the late 90s or whatever. Sunset, Grimwild, Nimble chat with Evan was great. Yeah, a lot of people have been saying they really enjoyed that. Curious your thoughts on solo RPGs. The jury's out. I, quite frankly, don't see the point. I play role-playing games because I enjoy the collaborative nature. And, audio's in and out, huh? All righty. Well, let me see what's going on. All right. How about that? Is that better? Yeah, I don't know. There's been something must have changed recently. Something with my audio. I don't know what it was, but it's been weird a little bit. It's been a little weird lately. Let me try changing this. Okay. All right. Watching my meters. Okay, how are we doing now? Well, yeah, I mean, it's a directional microphone. It is definitely that's the downside of a dynamic microphone like this. It sounds really good, but it has a very, very tight pickup pattern. And if you move off axis just a little bit, it dives down a lot, a lot. And if you come over to the side, it's even more. And so, it is definitely, it's got its advantages, right? But it definitely has its disadvantages as well. Yeah, exactly. It's practically silent, as you say. So there's a couple different options for different microphones. And again, there's pros and cons to all of them. Typically, microphones like this tend to be very good at rejecting everything that isn't directly in front of them, which is great for me because not that I have a very loud environment, but it does, and then there's other acoustic flourishes and elements that make the microphone have its own little element. But yeah, if you get off axis, you lose it real quick. Anyways, jury's out on solo RPGs for me yet. I haven't played them. I'm kind of going to when I start doing the Morio solo play, but I'm going to be interacting with chat, so it's still not really a fair assessment. I play role-playing games because I enjoy the collaborative nature. I enjoy the back and forth with other people and seeing what they add to the game. So in rolling on Oracle tables and interpreting them and making little stories up and writing little stories. I have never been a novelist in any sort of capacity. And I do think that there's an element of solo RPGs that I think really appeals to people who, maybe they view themselves as novelists or Maybe they wanted to be an author in another life. And that's not like an insult. I think that's a great thing. But yeah, I don't have that desire. I've never had that desire to write a story, to tell, nothing, never. So I think that element of the game doesn't really even appeal to me. And I've always had pretty much good access to different groups, and certainly since starting this YouTube channel. So the whole I can't find people to play games with me has never been a problem. My group has always been my in-person group has always been very, very, very eager, open, and willing to play in a wide variety of role-playing games. So that isn't an issue either. So yeah, I guess I don't really need or see the point. But again, if it's something that you do that you really enjoy, then I say more power to you. But again, we'll see. Again, it'll still have some collaborative elements, but we will see how it goes when I run the Moria rules for exploring the space. Good morning. It is 9:30 at night, sir. Anyways. I think we have to figure out I think we have to figure out what, again, I am cautiously optimistic about Dungeon World 2. The combat move list is certainly much more focused than I think we're used to seeing. It's a lot more, I don't know. We'll see. It remains to be seen how it's going to play out. But overall, I think it has a high potential. We'll say that. Haha, what's up, London? Well, but see, even then, if we're talking about play-by-post, right, you're still playing play-by-post with other people. You're still responding and interacting, and that I think is, and I mean, I'd rather play play-by-post than solo, because you're still riffing off of what other people have said and done, which I think is important. What is tonight's topic? Well, as you can see by the lack of thumbnail, that is the generic thumbnail that gets posted when I just literally click go live straight from OBS. And that usually happens when it's just, it's Saturday night. And like most Saturday nights, I'm not doing anything. And I just feel like hanging out and chatting about role-playing games. I was probably going to hop onto my Discord server. Nice last call. Patreon, you should check us out if you're not already. And but if I don't feel like doing that, I'll just go live instead and chat with you all. So no, there's no topic or anything. Brain dumping, stuff I've been thinking about the last couple of days, usually involving mega games, how to make the Moria solo game fun and interactive, but also potentially make me some money. Which of our crazy / dumb / brilliant ideas should we actually move forward for actually trying to create a game? Shadow Tide, Brickborn, Shadow Deep, Nightheart. I can't remember. We have like 7 at this point in the hopper. You're still working through the DW2. Is it worth playing over Daggerheart? Yes, absolutely. I think there will always be an advantage to playing a true PBTA game over Daggerheart. If for no other reason, then it doesn't have any of the trad elements of like range and, all the micro resource, tactical tracking. Again, Daggerheart, I don't think, I say this before, but I do think it is pretending to be a tactical game, but you still have to go through the motions, and that's fun. I'm not even complaining about that. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a solid thing. I think that's an important thing. That's actually one of the reasons that it appeals to me. But the other thing about Daggerheart is Daggerheart, despite heart being in the name, doesn't actually have any emotional mechanics in the game. Like, maybe if you reach maximum stress and you reach the vulnerable condition, that's about it. So with the Dungeon World 2 embracing / interacting a lot with some of the more modern magpie stuff, like from Avatar Legends and Masks, with some of the more conditional elements, emotional conditional elements, I think that lends itself, ironically, a little bit more towards, friendship is magic, type storytelling, right? Right. Yeah. I mean, if you enjoy the process, I know that, my buddy Kaz, from the channel, who I play my Friday night games with, I know he plays Star Trek Adventures, and he uses the Captain's Log supplement, and he loves it. He really enjoys it. But yeah, I don't, that's not why I play role-playing games. It's the same thing. Like, some people, I know there are people out there who literally have hundreds of Pathfinder 2 or maybe 5th edition character builds saved on D&D, Beyond, or on Path Builder. I have never, in 35 whatever years of playing role-playing games, I have never made a character just to make a character. Not even once. Let me rephrase it. Like, if it's a brand new game, I might make a character just to go through the character creation process once. And if anything, I do that literally once. And that's strictly and solely to learn the game. Outside of that, I have never made a character, just to make a build, see what this character would look like at high level. I've never done any of that. So I will definitely cover the Fabula Ultima Bestiary at some point. Jackal, Gull. I think it's still officially in beta, ? So I would definitely wait until it's like officially released. Yeah, I mean, Legends of the Mist is a whole, I think it's a very different game in its approach with the tags or the traits. I can't remember what they call that, but I still think Legends of the Mist is a very beautiful game, and I think it's a very interesting game. But Dungeon World 2, bringing in sort of the emotional components into a fantasy architecture, definitely does sort of eat into that pie. I could see that. Any exciting crowdfunders later this year? Trespasser just announced there's going to be one, hopefully in September. Yeah, no, I don't know. Maybe mine. No, I'm just kidding. But I don't know. Well, enjoy your Tet celebration. What is going on with my lights? I didn't turn them on. That's what's going on with them. It's late night. I mean, they are bright. I mean, they're not like painfully bright, but they do, shine in my face. That's so this is with no lights on, just from my monitor, basically. This is my backlight. This is my fill light. This is my key light, my main light, my brightest light, which has a really weird temperature right now. There we go. And then this is both lights, and this is all 3 lights. Have you ever made a character to play and not get to play that character? Probably not, because almost every character I've ever made has been made at a table, like when we're about to play. I don't think I've ever made a character at home or like by myself. maybe ever. I mean, again, aside from like when I'm testing out a new system and I want to test out the character creation process. Yeah. No, I don't think so. We've always done session 0 collaborative, even before session 0 was a thing. That's just a lot of times we would, especially if we're playing games that were a lot simpler, we would just make characters and then start playing, right? Like that night. What is the strong from? The strong is from the Rankin and Bass Hobbit movie, the animated movie from the 70s. And it's Smaug saying that from the cartoon. Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Nick, it's like there's so many different better games that Critical Role could be playing and should be playing, and I think it would be really good for them. And yeah, again, I like mechanics for role playing. And in fact, Dungeon World 2 does a really interesting thing, which is you opt into the conditions, right? You opt into the conditions. In some ways, it's a lot like Dragonbane, sort of, where in Dragonbane, you can push a roll, which basically means you get to re-roll the die if you fail. But if you push, you have to mark one of your conditions. So, I push and I mark angry. I push and I mark exhausted. And that's up to you to do that. And so you get to explain why this thing made you angry, or why this thing made you, exhausted, or why this thing made you upset or frightened. So that's pretty cool, because like in Avatar Legends, the GM can inflict emotional damage on you, right? Emotional damage, which I don't mind, by the way. I think it's pretty cool. I enjoy the challenge of actually role playing, which is to say, the game says, okay, your character is now X, and now it is my job to portray that. And that X could be damaged. That X could also be upset or frightened or angry or, disheartened or disillusioned, right? There's a lot of different elements of that, and I think that would be really cool. So, yeah. The last Pathfinder 2 character I made was an Eldamon trainer. You might have missed that, London, when you were taken off. Yeah, Smith ran a PF2 campaign. It was a Starfinder Pathfinder. It was a Starfinder 2 Pathfinder 2 Eldamon game, set in a sort of post-apocalyptic setting, a la kind of Fallout, kind of Dying Earth, and I was an Eldamon trainer. That's nice. Love Red Sonja. It's cheesy as hell, but I love it too. Have I ever explored Pendragon? I own Pendragon. We did a first look of Pendragon where I ended up getting hijacked and had to play the solo play game. I've played it at conventions, but I've never run a campaign of it. But I think the paired traits are really interesting. I do think there's elements of Pendragon with the favored traits and the opposite traits, chaste and whatever, lustful and stuff. Very cool. Could the multiple character build phenomenon be a product of not having session zeros or not having a group to play with? Is it a solo played mode? No. Okay, so someone's saying I don't think I have any noise cancellation, but there has been problems lately with my audio, and I don't know what is going on with it. So, yeah, I don't know. Let me turn down my compressor. So what's actually happening is I think I'm hitting my limiter. Okay. Yeah, anyways. I'll just give myself a little bit more leeway and then we'll go from there. Yeah, something happened. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was something in OBS or something, but something happened. Something happened on the way to heaven, and my audio has been really, really weird lately. So I'm not really quite sure what changed or how it changed, but yeah, I got to do some forensic things. The problem is I keep getting close to clipping, and I'm not quite sure why. So we'll see. All right. Well, anyways, I don't know. Sorry. What was I saying? Oh, it's because Commander Snookums was saying, like, why do people make multiple character builds? It's because some people play role-playing games because they want to make imaginary people. That is at its fundamental basis, that is what they are interested in doing, and that's what they're here to play. I don't actually, I've said this before, I'm a very unusual role-playing game player. I don't actually really care about my character all that much. It's not that important to me, and I don't really see myself, living in their shoes. So, but even outside of that, like even when I played World of Warcraft and stuff, I never cared about builds, and it's just not something that I'm really particularly interested in. I'm almost always more interested in the play of the game, So, but anyways, yeah. Let me know if that does seem better now. Yeah, again, I don't. I got to figure it out, but I'm not happy with where my meters are. Let me just put it that way. Something happened. I don't know if there was like a firmware update on my audio interface or something changed in a setting in OBS that I don't know why it changed, but I'm basically audio 101. The way a compressor works is it takes your loud parts and pushes them down to make them quieter. And the idea of a compressor is it's supposed to take your low lows and your high highs and squish them together, right? Compress them. And you don't want to go too high, because if you go too high, your audio signal will clip. And there's not enough headroom in the signal to process that information. It's like if you shine a really bright flashlight at a camera, it's not going to see anything. It's just all going to be white. There's just too much noise for the signal to be able to, or too much information for the signal to process anything. And anyways, so what's happening sometimes is I'm getting these transients, which is basically a really high volume spike, and my audio signal is turning on my limiter, which is like really clamping down my signal. And then because it's just a transient, it's just a sudden spike of volume, the thing that I say after it gets way compressed down. So anyways, long story short, I got to do some work. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow or something. Or we could do it on this stream. It doesn't really matter, but that's where I'm at. I'll just continue to fiddle with it while we're here. All righty. So Sunset, what's up? I liked in your chat with Evan encouraging environmental stat blocks and developing mechanics for the world. Clever design in that space, I feel, is where a lot of low-hanging fruit is. Yeah, I mean, people seem to have responded really well to the Daggerheart environments. So, yeah, I agree. Well, yeah, I mean, Legend is another. I mean, Ridley Scott, he says it was a fever dream, and apparently he hated the movie, but I think it's great. I mean, Tim Curry as Darkness, Son of Darkness, or whatever his name is great. Right. So that's another thing, Math Guy Dave. I played Magic the Gathering for years and years and years, and I played it really competitive. And, that's one of the reasons I never got interested in Commander. I don't really care about, putting together combos of abilities. I played Magic the Gathering to win, right? I was playing competitively. So the only decks I built were the decks that I was going to play, and I would build them to the meta. Can you expand on what you mean by I am more interested in the play? I am more interested in what happens while we are at the table actively playing the game. That's what I mean by that. I don't care. Theorizing and daydreaming about my character, thinking up stories or backgrounds for that character almost interests me nothing. Like I should say, it doesn't interest me at all. Another thing is I really like, so independent of all of that, I really like what I call diegetic. Well, I mean, I don't call it, but it's a term I use a lot, is diegetic advancement. I don't like builds. I don't like the idea of planning out your character's progression. It's just not. I think it closes down avenues of play. I think it boxes people in. I just don't think it's fun and interesting, and I think it turns you off from exploring the possibilities of what could happen during play. But again, I understand that I'm not condemning it. I'm simply saying it's not for me. That's all, So. But interesting. Well, I think Daggerheart environments are only as useful. So I view Daggerheart environments the same way I view Daggerheart adversaries, which is, right, descriptive, not prescriptive. Here's a list of ideas with some mechanically fun, chewy, chunky bits. Now, I have seen people who have made what I think are overly complex Daggerheart environments. I think that's a mistake. I've also seen people who've made what I think are overly complex Daggerheart adversaries. And ultimately, and again, this might be wrong, so take this with a grain of salt. I'm going to run Daggerheart, and if a creature should have an ability, I'll probably spend a fear point and give it to it, and not worry about it. I don't need the creature to have all of its abilities. That's just going to eat up a lot of space, yes, you can help yourself. The writer or whoever's creating the game can do a lot of the heavy lifting, right? I don't want to literally have to make up every single creature's ability and attack for every single thing for the rest of the time, for every single creature that they encounter. So it's nice. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there are going to be plenty of times where I just, hey, this monster has this ability and this ability. But if you're fighting a giant and I want to do some sort of big sweeping club attack that's going to hit everybody nearby, to a certain extent, I almost feel like I don't need that ability because I'll just spend a fear point and do it. And again, is that right? Is that wrong? Yes, no, maybe. This is why I argue that Daggerheart isn't really that tactical of a game if I can just make something up and do it whenever I want. Kind of makes the player's choices a little bit irrelevant. So I think there are people who are interested in playing Daggerheart as a much more tactical game. And that means for them, getting the adversary correct is a big deal. But that's not how I'm going to use the game. And quite frankly, I don't think that's how the people who wrote Daggerheart intend or planned to use the game. So, yeah. Yes. Well, for Magic the Gathering, I was definitely a spike. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Burning Wheel is a whole different, ball game, because in Burning Wheel, what the choices that you make about your character's background are literally the defining elements of how your character advances, how your character progresses. If you talk about like a life path system, like Traveler, is very, as you make these choices, you get this skill, you get this skill, you get this skill. So in that case, your background is quite literally what mechanical abilities that you have in the game. Many games, Pathfinder 2 especially, definitely promote that style of pre-building your character, and rightfully so. A lot of people really, really, really enjoy that style of game. Not to derail the conversation, as I always do with talks of Wilderfeast, but one of the things that I thought was really endearing to me in Wilderfeast is, you're as a wilder, your PC is a human who can eat monsters and gain their abilities. So the way that you gain new abilities is by eating a monster. And the abilities that you can get from eating a monster are the abilities that monster has. So like the idea of, you looking at the list like it's a menu and going, oh, it'll be sick to combine this trait with this monster trait, and then that'll be this sick combo. I mean, you could do that, but there's no like choice that you're making. Like if you want it to, I don't know, acquire the blubber trait, you better go find monsters that have the blubber trait. Like you don't get to just choose it upon leveling up, which I think is really neat. Similarly, we looked at Heroic Deeds, which is an indie RPG made by Garblag Games. And in Heroic Deeds, every ability that your character could ever have is tied to a set of heroic deeds that they have to achieve. And sometimes it's just like a one and done, but sometimes it's like, hey, once you've crit 5 times, or once you've, thrown yourself against multiple enemies 4 times, or once you've, killed an enemy with a single blow 3 times, you immediately get this new ability. That's the only way you can get that ability. You can't level up and just take it. If you want to get that ability, you have to perform these deeds. And I really like that, because I think that it means that when you look at your character, you can't just build a character. It has to be played in order to exist. And I think that's really neat. And one of the things that I remember, there was a defining moment for me. We were playing Pathfinder 2, and I was playing. I don't get to be a player that often. And I had a level 3 fighter, and I had chosen, I don't even remember what I chose, but I think I was a sword and board fighter. And I had chosen some feats, and I was, having fun with it. And I was looking forward to, exploring the mechanical space of being sort of a defensive fighter, with shield block and extra reactions and stuff. And my character died. And Smith was like, okay, make a new character. And I got stumped, because I was like, shit. There is nothing stopping me from just literally remaking the exact same character with the same stats, the same background, the same ancestry, the same skill feats, the same class feats, the same general feats. I could literally, even the same equipment, really, I could just make the same exact character. And why shouldn't I? That's the character I wanted to play, right? That was the character I was excited to play. So I was like, but I can't just make the same character and run it back. And so then I'm like, okay, so then I'll pick something else. And then I was like, but something else by definition is second place or third place or fifth place. It's not the thing that I want to play. So I like literally, I like missed a session because I told Smith, I go, I don't know what to do. I'm like actually really in this existential crisis of just being like, it feels lame to just make the same exact character, but also I don't want to make a different character. So what am I? And the game has no restrictions about me just literally making the same exact character. And it put me in a very weird spot. And I think that campaign folded shortly thereafter. And it may have been because I was just like, I can't handle this right now. I know it sounds crazy, but yeah, you know. Anyways, I'm like really behind on chat. Sorry. Hey, what's up, Evan? We are talking about nothing. Whenever I stream on a day that isn't Tuesday or Thursday or Sunday, usually it's just an open chat bullshitting. Typically, I end up pulling out the whiteboard at some point and I start talking about either really, really great ideas that I will never develop or make, or really, really, really terrible ideas that I also probably will never develop or make. But I'm much more interested in the horrible ideas than I am the good ideas. Let's see here. Does spending fear really go that far to relieve the feeling of GM fudging? I think it does. I think it's a big deal. I'm playing Fabula Ultima right now with my group on Fridays. We actually didn't get to play yesterday because my mom broke her wrist. But villains have Ultima points. And you could spend an Ultima point to, have the villain escape. Have the villain, I'll get you next time, gadget. And it's great. The players understand that this is part of the mechanic of the game. And I think that does help a lot for sure. Did someone say Wilderfeast? I always will say Wilderfeast. So Wilderfiend just turns choose skill on level up to get skills as loot. Yeah, kind of, for sure. In a way, yeah. Which edition of 7th Sea? Because Story Beats, I think, is 2nd edition. Well, I know they're coming out with a 3rd edition, which is supposed to be going maybe back a little bit more to 1st edition. I'm not sure. Indeed, it is the London. Well, Miseries and Misfortunes is a Loot Crane game, and most Burning Wheel games are tied into some form of diegetic progression. Like if you look at Torchbearer, Burning Wheel, Mouse Guard, in order to advance a skill, you have to use that skill, and you have to succeed at a certain number of checks and fail at a certain number of checks. And, if you have a skill like Dungeoneering, you literally, on the character sheet, there's little bubbles, and every time you pass a test, you mark a pass, and every time you fail a test, you mark a fail. And depending on how high ranked you are, you need more of those bubbles. And then when you get to that certain threshold, you erase all the bubbles and you literally level up your skill right there and then. So it's in order to get better at the ritualism skill, or to get better at the fighting skill, or to get better at the Dungeoneering skill or the cooking skill, you guess what? The only way to do it is to cook. And in those games, you actually have to pass and fail, which is to say you have to be doing stuff that, getting successes and getting good, reps in. But you also have to fail, because if you're not failing, it means you're not testing yourself, right? You're not pushing yourself. You're not trying to test your boundaries. So that you have to make sure that you don't just pass, but you also fail. So that in Wilderfeast, the GM builds everyone's character rather than the players. No, very much not. Very much not. I mean, for starters, obviously the players may very much say, I I want to go hunt that monster because that monster has something I want out of it. The other thing is that a monster in Wilderfeast, when it dies and you eat it, there's a big list of stuff that you can get from that monster. You can get a stat improvement, you can get a skill improvement, or you can gain a monstrous trait from it. But you only get to gain one. And as a player, you have to pick which one you want. So, maybe a single monster might have, I don't know, 8 or 10 things to pick from. And it's up to you to pick what you want. So, but technically, yes, if, the GM literally never made a monster with the blubber trait ever available, then I guess, yes, you would not get to choose that. So Derek says, I think that's one of the reasons that life path character builders appeal to me in theory. My worry that I'll get something I don't want to play is the only thing counting against that. So it's interesting because we were talking about life path systems, and I think Beowulf was like, maybe we should maybe you can make 3 characters and then pick the one that you want to play. And his concern was like, what if I end up with a character that I don't want to play? And it's funny to me because that's exactly why I play role-playing games. So it's very funny to me that folks who seem to be more like pro role-playing are very, very much concerned about ending up with a character they don't want to play. Whereas that's part of the fun of it for me. I like not having control over what character I play or how my character advances. I think it's much more exciting that way, for sure. Yeah, I mean, Stan, that's a whole other conversation about if you could just literally remake your character and they come in at the same level, would it even matter that you died? And arguably, that's a good thing. It is a game. We're not trying to punish people for playing the game with us, right? Yeah, she'll be fine. She's got to wear an air cast for 6 months or 6 weeks. So, but luckily she didn't hit her head or anything, but well, that's the thing, River Ray. I am definitely a part of my philosophy of the game is gameism. I believe role-playing games, shocking, I know, are games. And I think that the mechanics matter. I think what gets measured matters, and I think therefore what gets mechanics matters. And for me, having a mechanical delineation between characters is important to me, for sure. Interesting. Okay. Well, I can't say, I'm not a big 7th Sea guy, so I can't really say much about 1st or 2nd edition, really. What are your thoughts on how maps should work? That is a very interesting question. I don't know what you mean with that. Well, no, my complaint, Shazbot, is that I wanted to play a sword and board character, so I got to play a sword and board character. So when my character died, I could just play another sword and board character, and that felt like cheap. I would prefer if I just didn't get to pick anything at all. Now, that's a London statement. For me, it's not about the character I want to play. It's the experience the character I want to play will give me. So, yes, I do agree to a certain extent that folks who are big on role-playing they come at it as a form of self-expression. Absolutely. And there is an affinity to and a thin membrane between them and their character. Yes, right. We talk about, right, immersion and those elements. I am like Emmanuel Galetto, the author of Fabula Ultima. I believe immersion is not a good thing. In fact, Emmanuel Galetto believes immersion is a dangerous and even problematic thing. The classic example of this is it's what my character would do. And that mindset, that philosophy, I think is an example of immersionism taken to the extreme, obviously. But I also think that I'm not interested in playing with your player character. I'm interested in playing with you, my fellow player, far more than I am interested in playing with your PC. So for me, our characters are always going to just be characters in a story, right? And I'm not playing with, Eruvar and Rothbin and, Bompo. I'm playing with Bob, Steve, and Nick. And I'm good with that. I like that because that's what I want out of a role-playing game, right? I want that that collaborative effort, I want the collaborative motion of the players. I don't want the players to disappear into the background. Far from it. I want them to be at the forefront. Correct. Very much, Commander Snookums. It is a game to me, not a performance. It's a role-playing game. Role-playing game. And I take that to heart. So, yeah, it's very much a game to me, not a performance. And I don't see, I don't see a lot of intrinsic value in the performance. Now, again, for me, I failed at this for 5 years to express what it is that I think role-playing games are. I always joke when people talk about a role-playing scene, they're like, oh, we did a lot of role-playing that session. And then I always ask them, okay, so when you're not doing that and you're still sitting down playing D&D, what do you call that? Right? Like if role-playing to you means like, oh, talking in character, probably in a vaguely Scottish accent, probably in that whisper serious voice. No, you cannot go. I cannot let you. It would be too much. If you're not doing that, if you're doing anything else, but you're playing D&D or Pathfinder or whatever, or Call of Cthulhu, what do you call that? If talking like that is role playing, what is anything else? You're not playing a role playing? You're not role playing, but you're playing a role playing game. So which is it? I don't. Derek says I call it combat usually. Right. My thought process is I play a lot of board games, and for me, the process of playing a role playing game is I am taking on the control of this singular character, and that's what makes it a role-playing game, right? I'm not controlling an abstract concept. I'm not controlling an entire army. I am controlling one character, and the elements of controlling that character has a role to play, whether that is a role in the game, a role in the party, a role in the fiction. And so and then my job is to play, I play that character, So, let's see here. River says, a friend of mine is writing up a blog post on video games mostly, but extending it to some RPGs, about how little she values immersion, typically, but what she calls texture. Okay. Yeah, to be clear, I also don't like I don't want my role-playing game to be textureless, right? In that regard. So, yes. Right, this is the classic, right? Like, well, my character wouldn't go on that adventure. Okay, cool. Make a new character that would. Your job is to play that. That's your job. You like my role-playing voice? Thank you, Roman. So kind of like the PCs are action figures with friends. The figure has traits and features which dictate what it does, and you're playing with friends and messing, tickering with the finger and features. Yes. The thing is like sometimes that is derogatorily called pawn status, where you're like literally treating your character like it's a pawn on a game board. And there's an element of that for sure. But for me, it's more like I am interested in using those characters with my friends to create great moments, to create great experiences, to create great stories, and then hopefully enjoy those. So I'm not interested in this sort of element of realistic portrayal of characters. I will choose the character option, meaning like the choice for my PC, that is going to lead to a more exciting moment, a more feral moment, a more genre appropriate moment, a more exciting moment, a fun moment. I'm going to use my character to create the best experience that I can for the whole table. That's what my character is there to do. And if that means that, we're fighting monsters and my character is a sick tank and I need to hold aggro on 3 major, DPS mobs, then that's my role and I'm going to fulfill that. I don't mind metagaming the way that other people do. The great Ray Winiger said, great D&D challenges the player and the player character. And I have no problem with people getting good at role-playing games. In fact, I think it's part of the fun because, again, I want to play with my friends, and I like seeing my friends be good at the game that they're playing. Right. So, Julian, I tend to agree with you. Role-playing is simply making decisions from the perspective of the character. Now, where that gets a little bit tricky is when you start thinking about things like author stance and director stance. Because in author and director stance, you are making decisions from the perspective of an author, or you are making decisions from the perspective of a director. So is that still role-playing? It's tough to say. There are definitely elements of role-playing games that board games typically tend to be much more constrained in what you can and can't do. Role-playing games typically have a GM who is able to adjudicate situations. So I enjoy that. But, I have played many, dungeon crawler TTRPGs that essentially felt like a board game, and I didn't find that to be a problem. In fact, some of those games were some of our favorite games of all times. So, yeah. In fact, I would argue that a lot of D&D that has been played for many, many years basically felt a lot like a board game. So, and I think that's okay. I think board games are fun. What's up? We got a super chat from the London station. How I've missed all this esoteric bullshit. Oh, only the most esoteric of bullshit for our people here. Yeah, well, it never stopped, London. It never stopped. So social mechanics. What's the room's feeling on those? I love them. I think they're cool. I mean, again, I think things that get mechanics matter. I'm not a huge believer in the fruitful void. So that's not to say that I want to overly mechanize things to death. I think a great example of a game that does this extremely well is Forged in the Dark style games, Blades in the Dark in particular, where you have a very robust, very universal framework of mechanics that you can use and adapt to any situation and apply a mechanical element to it, a mechanical outcome generator to it. And I think that's really, really cool. So, yeah, Brindlewood Bay, some people criticize PBTA games, even Forged in the Dark games, like Blades in the Dark, because they say they're board game like, because they have a procedure, because they have a structure. Even if you go back to old school D&D, right? It had that dungeon procedure, right? Dungeon turn, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. It's a very procedural game. If you watch any of our Torchbearer games, you know that Torchbearer is an extremely procedural game. And that's okay, because it's not, people have this, I think people have a flawed assumption that role-playing games are designed to completely simulate a fantasy reality and allow you to completely immerse yourself into the virtual reality of an imaginary character. And I'm here to tell you, there's a lot of role-playing games that definitely do not do that. This is true, Boyko. This is true. Again, I don't hate the OSR, but there are certain things about the way that they have co-opted terms and terminology that I am not that they have done. Right, where they're like, oh, yeah, this game's so cool because it doesn't have any rules. Right. Yeah, I mean, what Baker's quote was, if you create an area of the game or something like that to be explored, don't trample over it with a million rules or something like that, to that extent. I can't remember the exact quote, but yeah. Yeah, I'm not really, I've read a lot of books and I always forget, but I think D&D was originally referred to as a fantasy adventure game for sure. And I love that. So, if we wanted to start breaking down, mechanics, or terminology, I would be very happy to rephrase or redefine various games as fantasy adventure games. And I would be happy playing those. What games would so this is what's, this is what's difficult is that, what games would I give the title fantasy adventure game today? Well, the problem is what I would say defines a fantasy adventure game is a game that doesn't care about role-playing, and so as the community defines it. But the problem is the games that I would want to define as a role-playing game, a true role-playing game, would be games that had mechanics for things like being angry, or being upset, or being afraid, or being insecure. And there's this weird, I just don't, I don't know. I don't get it. Sometimes, I know this is going to sound crazy, but the Olympics are happening. Sometimes it seems to me like people play role-playing games, and it's like you're sitting down to compete in the biathlon, and instead of worrying about how well you ski or how well you shoot a rifle, you're worried about how good your makeup looks. It seems to me like it is completely irrelevant to the game that you are playing, and yet it is the reason that so many people play that game, which is very strange to me, because if what you care about is how well your makeup looks, then why are you competing in biathlon? Go do something else. But I don't know. That's where I lose it, So now, Boyko is right to a certain extent. Okay. In fact, I would actually say Boyko is correct. If the following happens in your games, let's say you're playing, I don't know, D&D 5th edition. Okay. And something happens. The party's cleric, who your character is very close to, right, gets taken down in combat. Not killed, maybe, but just, reduced to 0, a failed death saving throw or whatever, right? But nasty by some cruel gnoll, wicked gnoll tribal chieftain. And I role play, I describe how my character is very upset about this. Maybe I make a cool speech in a slightly vaguely Scottish whisper accent. And then I rush over to attack the gnoll. It's not maybe necessarily the most strategic thing, but I do it. And I'm very angry. And the GM says, wow, your character is angry. Make that attack with advantage, or add 5 to your damage roll, or roll with damage advantage, right? To make sure that you're landing a very powerful hit, because this is a big moment for your character and you're really selling it. Okay. Now the role playing and all that other elements matters, but I don't think a lot of people play like that. And in fact, I know a lot of people who would say, I wouldn't want that to be the way that my game happens. It's like they want to play a game that has nothing to do with the way that they play the game. I don't, you'd think I should know this better, but I really don't. I don't understand it. I don't get it. So I don't know. Maybe you all can explain it to me better than I can. I think I'm losing myself a little bit in the sauce here, but yeah. Are we not just doing our makeup before the sessions? Well, no, that's the point. Well, that's like creating a background and bringing it to the advanced. No, you need to do your makeup at the session so that it matters. I think I kickstarted Broken Empires, but actually I got along well. I had dinner with Trevor Duval at Gen Con. We had met, but we never really chatted and hung out before. And he was good people, and I think he had a good time hanging out with me. I know he shouted out us on his channel because he was like, I really love what Derek is doing over on Night's Last Call, because he just gets to hang out with his audience members all the time. And I was like, yeah, that's basically what I do. Well, David, look, the reality of the situation is, depending on your GM and depending on the complexity of the game, unfortunately, there are going to be walls, that you can't go, you can't go through them. I mean, this is also one of the advantages of dungeons for the million billionth time. Dungeons make it really easy to give your players full player agency while also literally giving them a maze that they can't escape, can't go anywhere else. But, you have to make a certain amount of adjustments for the fact that it is ultimately a game, and I'm only going to have prepared what I have prepared. So, yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you can tell your players. You can even tell your players. I've done this before. Guys, you really want to go to do that thing? I don't have that thing prepared even remotely. So you have two options. One, we could call the session early, and I will start prepping that for next time. Or we could do something else for the rest of the session. We can then head to there at the end of the session to pick it up next time. Or we could not do that, and you guys could instead focus. But a lot of people don't like to do that because they go, oh, that will ruin the immersion. And I say, I don't give a shit. I like being honest, and I don't try to like lie to my players that like, oh, this is actually a really real world and everything behind here is completely filled. I don't even use a GM screen 90% of the time. So would this stuff be G or S? Which stuff, Sunset? I think it's So, any advice for first timers? Ooh. Gen Con is drinking from the fire hose these days. It is huge. It is massive. I would say my best advice is don't try to do too much. A lot of people fill up their calendars. This is a mistake. Number two, if you are going to do a bunch of events, realize it is a big fucking convention. And if you have to go from, say, Lucas Oil Stadium for your 8 a.m. 8 a.m. character or 8 a.m. slot and it ends at noon, and your next slot starts at 12:30 at JW Marriott, you're not making it. You're just not going to make it. So, it's tough because you may not have an implicit understanding of where things are physically and how long it takes to traverse. But generally speaking, I would really avoid getting events that are back to back, unless it's something, one, that you can get to and arrive to late, or two, something that is in the same area or building. Like if they're all over in Lucas Oil Stadium or whatever, or they're all at the JW Marriott or whatever, that's fine. 3, if you're interested in checking out cool indie non-traditional RPGs, definitely check out Indie Games on Demand. You will not find it in the role-playing games section. You will find it in the Z section, which is the Isle of Misfits games. Yes, and it is called Indie Games on Demand. It is called iGod, abbreviated. You don't sign up for it. You can buy a ticket, but I don't think it really matters. Basically, you show up and you get assigned to a pod, and then usually you end up picking a kind of one of the GMs is going to run a game that they're really passionate about, and that can help. That's a really great way to be introduced to like weird new independent games. Okay, this is a new one. I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it. I don't like saying this because it's bad, but I would avoid, or at least be very cautious about playing in sponsored, company-run, or maybe even worse, third-party run system games run by the system or by the company. Okay, what am I talking about? I'm talking about I'm talking about Magpie Games, who actually is not going to be at Gen. Well, I think they're going to be at Gen Con, but they used to have this really huge area over at the Hyatt, and they just announced that they're not going to do that anymore. But let's say you want to learn how to play Avatar Legends, right? So you sign up to run in a game run by Magpie, and you think this is going to be the best way to learn how to play this game. So you sign up for an event. 4 times out of 5, you are going to get a terrible experience. And the reason is because you made the false assumption that because it's being run by Magpie, the people who wrote the game, that the GMs are somehow good or better or even know the game. And the answer is they don't. Unfortunately, role-playing games have gotten very popular. And one of the results of that is, a company who makes a role-playing game is still just, 2 or 3 people. But now, if there's 100 or 200 or 500 people who want to play that game, they need to basically hire people to run the game for them. Gen Con is expensive, and there's a lot of people who have a hard time getting there and getting a room. And there's a lot of people who basically pay to play. They volunteer to run games for these companies in exchange for a badge and a hotel room. A lot of times, they've never played this game in their life. They barely know how the game works, and they end up giving people terrible experiences. They usually say something like, "Oh, I have a lot of experiences running games." And what they mean is 9 times out of 10, 5th edition D&D. So suddenly they're tasked with running an Avatar game, which is not only a PBTA game, it's a modern PBTA game. They don't know anything about Avatar. They don't know anything about PBTA. They don't know anything about Avatar. They might have gotten like a quick 30-minute, once over on Wednesday before the con started. And they're going to run the session shitty. And they're going to run the session bad. And unfortunately, I have seen this become a real problem over the last 5 years, since COVID or whatever. And unfortunately, I met a lot of people who've had really bad experiences playing in games run by these people. So that's the real takeaway, which is that a lot of these GMs are only running this game because they are being basically paid to do so. They have to do it. They're being, they volunteer to do it so they could get a free badge and a free hotel room. And they don't know the game. They were just introduced to it. So a lot of games end up getting run a lot just basically like D&D 5th edition, because that's what the GM knows how to run. Now, again, are there good eggs amongst all these rotten apples? Yes. But it's a roll of the dice. It's a crapshoot. And unfortunately, it is becoming more and more popular. And now there are companies that hire other companies to run their games for them. So one of these companies is called Lurking Fears. And Lurking Fears will basically you hire them to manage your convention and run a bunch of games for you. So now they're like literally a third party, And again, sometimes you get great GMs, but yeah. Anyways, which is why last year at Origins Game Fair in Columbus, we had about 25 Knights of Last Call people show up. And the majority of them spent the entire convention playing games with each other. And it was so prolific that is why this year for Origins 2026, hopefully I won't lose money, but I have shelled out $3,000 and change to secure the Knights of Last Call, our own private VIP room, so that I can provide a gameplay space for the Knights of Last Call members to basically hang out with each other. And I hate to say it, these kind of pre-vetted gamers and GMs and players, so that everybody can hang out with familiar faces, or at least people everyone knows, hey, we're all part of the Knights of Last Call community. That makes it a lot easier for people to feel, like a safe space. In some cases, people have been playing games with each other for years, just virtually. And more importantly, it means that no one else is going to bother us. We don't have to worry about finding a location and blah, 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 blah. So, yes. So Kalana's here, and yeah, she was one of the people who didn't even go to the vendor hall. So yeah, and so she's definitely one of the reasons I'm doing this. Basically, is because people like her are just so great at wanting to run and play games with the fellow Knights of the Last Call members, and it's like, why wouldn't I try to enable that and empower that and all that other stuff? So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. Plus, yeah, we'll make it nice. We'll try to, Booth B will bring in baked goods. I'll try to maybe, provide some, water, or maybe I can get some snacks, and, we'll try to make it nice. So, Derek, those sound like the company is doing a shitty job. Why would you not train your GMs to run your game to ensure some level of quality? There's just no time, Commander Snookums. There's just no time. There's just no time. I mean, you got to understand. I mean, a lot of these companies are just so they're fly by night. They're run on a shoestring budget. It's 5 people crammed in some little office somewhere, or maybe even 3 people. They don't have the logistical support, like this idea that these people are professionals is laughable. And I'm not even saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying, like, yeah, that kind of requires, a lot more work than they have time for. So a lot of times these people come in on Wednesday, they meet them on Wednesday, they learn the game on Wednesday, and then they got to start running games on Thursday, 8 a.m., right? Nice. Share the load. So there you go. Kim is great, says, I once ran a game for a company that assured me that I could learn their 2nd edition and GM it in one night. And it was very, very different. I was super unprepared for that game, and it was super awkward. Correct. Right. Business and, that's one of the cool things. That's one of the reasons why Roll for Combat is such a pretty good dynamic adventure or a venture, because Steven loves role-playing games, but he will be the first to admit, he's not a designer, but he's a great business person who's run a lot of very successful businesses. Mark loves games, loves role-playing games, great designer, but Mark will tell you he's not a schmoozer, logistical master, that's not Mark's bag. So together they work really well. Definitely a kind of a yin and yang situation there. But yeah, so, and again, don't be overwhelmed. Don't get FOMO for Gen Con. It is too big for any one person to do it all. It's bigger than you could possibly imagine. Be prepared to take some downtimes. Avoid the food trucks. The quality has gone to shit. They've jacked their prices up. It is not worth it. And then the lines are so long because that's where everybody thinks that they should go. And it's outrageous. Like, you're going to wait 45 minutes to get a $10 street taco that is probably a $4 street taco. Don't do it. Again, like all things, it used to be great. And then, capitalism ruined it. So my advice is be willing to go if you go 2 blocks away from the convention center, the number of people that are trying to get into a restaurant will drop precipitously, and you will be able to have a much greater success at finding, a place to eat. So there's that. What was the attendance last year at Gen Con? Let's take a look at it here. 72,000. 71,000 in 2024, 72,000 in 2025. So, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it's quite the sight. It's quite the sight. It's quite awesome. It has changed a lot. Oh, it is a lot of people. It is a lot of people. But again, I have a lot of thoughts on Gen Con and all this other stuff. Yeah, no, but I mean, here's the thing I would say more than anything. For me, it is, I do not go to Gen Con. Well, to be clear, this will be like my 25th Gen Con. So I've been to quite a few. But for me, it is not about getting a chance to play games. It is not a chance to buy new stuff. Unfortunately, nowadays with VTTs, if you really want to play a new game, you could probably find a game online to do it, or a YouTube video of somebody else playing it. If you want to buy something, guess what? I remember 2019 Gen Con. We were really excited. Pathfinder 2nd Edition was getting released at Gen Con, and me and Tim from our channel, we were at Gen Con. I want to say, did Tim have his kids by then? Yeah, Tim had his kids by then. But for some reason, his kids were like with the grandparents or something. And we were really excited. And we got our Pathfinder 2 core rulebook, and we were like showing it off to our group chat, our Discord chat. And this is before Knights Last Call existed. And Smith, who did not go to Gen Con, was like, yeah, boys, mine looks great too. And we were kind of like, we're like, wait a second, how did you get yours? He's like, it arrived this morning. So I remember at a later Gen Con, there was a later Gen Con, maybe 2016 or something. There was a board game that we really wanted to play, and it was getting released at Gen Con. They sold out on the first day, and we were really upset. So my buddy went online, went to Amazon, had it ordered, overnighted it to his hotel. We got it the next day and played it that night. Long story short, Gen Con isn't about, in my opinion, about playing new games or trying to get the first release or whatever. For me, Gen Con is a mecca. It's a spiritual journey to be surrounded by that many people. Now, it may be different than it used to be, because nowadays, right, nerd culture is celebrated. Everybody loves Lord of the Rings. Everybody loves Harry Potter. Maybe we don't love J.K. Rowling, but, like, fantasy and nerdism is celebrated. It's not, the pariah culture that it used to be. So for me, I still have this very strong nostalgic element of being surrounded by people like, 25 years ago, if you said something about the One Ring, nobody knew what that was. But at Gen Con, they did. So it was a really cool thing to be surrounded by all those people who are all there for the same thing that you are. It's kind of like going to a sporting game, right? A sporting event where it's like, hey, we're all here to watch the game. We're all here to root our team on. And that's pretty cool. So, but I'll also say that Gen Con has become, diluted. It's a little bit more of a celebration of nerd culture than it is necessarily, it's called the best 4 days in gaming, but it's also kind of more of a celebration of nerd culture now more than anything. But oh, yes. In fact, Shazbot, the very first Gen Con that we went to, I remember that it was in Wisconsin. This was the last year it was in Wisconsin. It used to be in Milwaukee before it moved to Indianapolis. And I want to say it was 2001. Could be 2002, but it was 2001 or 2001. 2001 or 2002. And I remember the first night that we were in our hotel room at Gen Con, my very first Gen Con, Fellowship of the Ring had just come out on DVD. And we were watching Fellowship of the Ring on DVD on Smith's laptop. He had a Dell gamer laptop, and we were watching it in the hotel room. So fun stuff. But yeah, I mean, to be clear, one of the other sad things is like when you go there, most of the stuff is going to be for D&D for sure. Unfortunately. I mean, again, not unfortunately, it makes sense. I mean, people are there to make money, and if you want to make money, you should definitely talk about D&D. I forgot to go live on Twitch. Oh, well. Oh, I don't even have my YouTube open because I went live from OBS. I was really confused what was happening here. All right. Ooh, nice. Yeah, I need to see it. I haven't seen it in theaters since before COVID. I used to go, every other year or whatever, 2 years when they would release it, whether extended or not extended or whatever. But I would go and watch it, and I haven't seen it since COVID, so definitely need to see it. Ooh, too bright. There we go. Anyways. Have you considered doing a mega game that revolves around factionalism, like Legend of the Five Rings Clan Roar? No. I mean, yes, but no. Because TLDR, we don't have a big enough... all the players have to be able to play together, and when we create that kind of like cutthroat PvP style play, it could be very degenerate. We don't have enough people in our community to support that kind of gameplay. So that's what it really comes down to. Like, if we had, 50 people to be Lion Clan, 50 people to be Crane Clan, 50 people to be Scorpion Clan or whatever, then that would be great. But, we have like 50 people total, so it's not really an option for us. But it would be fun, and you'd have to have like the right, mature types of people to be able to play in it. A lot of people play role-playing games, and they're kind of used to winning all the time because that's what a role-playing game is. What are your thoughts on anti-tags, things which define what things aren't? I don't see enough of that. Boy, what game did that? We really liked it. Was it Grimwild? I might say it was Grimwild, but there was a game that we recently did a first look on, and I loved it. I don't remember what it was, but I enjoy it. Oh, it's Draw Steel. Okay. Yeah, it was cool. I like it. I agree. In fact, one of the tips of advice that I always give when people are trying to like, okay, Grimwild does do a bunch of that. Yeah, choose 2 of these that you are and 1 that you aren't, right? Yeah, so I mean, other games are doing it. Grimwild, choose 2 of these you are and choose. In fact, whatever mentioned, Wilderfeast mentioned, in Wilderfeast, when you make a character, finally, choose 1 you are and 1 you struggle to be. So here's another example of that nomenclature, right? Of, so it's like, I am brutal and I struggle to be careful, or something like that. But I always used to tell people, a great way to kind of, develop or build a character in terms of trying to understand your mindset, if you want to make decisions from the mindset of a character, is what is one thing you always do? What is one thing you will never do? And, ideally they're big things that'll come up relatively often, right? Not like, I will never use mint toothpaste, like, okay, that's cool, but that's not really going to come up a whole lot. But, like, Shazbot, we were talking today in the Discord about Legend of the Five Rings as archetypes for designer philosophy. And I said, I am a crane. Yeah, no, London, it was tough. People took it very seriously, which is cool, but it was hard. It was hard for me. I mean, people were getting upset, and I appreciated their passion, but it was upset to see. It was upsetting, and I realized, I was like, okay, we need to be better at this. We need to get better at this. Seeing all those tabs broke your brain. Listen, we're always right. I mean, we got a bunch of stuff here. We got heroic deeds. We got heroic deeds. We got Wilderfeast. We got Dolmenwood. We got Dolmenwood, the campaign setting. We've got Land of Eam, Mucklands. We've got Shadowdark. We've got Beyond the Wall. We've got the character sheet from Beyond the Wall for the village. We've got the index of my Depths of Perdition STL files. We got Dungeon World 2. We've got the Nimble rules. We got the Nimble Creator Kit. We've got the Lizard Folk from Nimble. We got the Mimics from Nimble. The Fiends from Nimble. Vagabond, the printer-friendly version. Vagabond, the non-printer-friendly version. We got a lot of stuff. We're always wheeling and dealing. And this is just this week, Have you decided on whether monster hunting or deeds will be used for the mega game? The answer, Edenism, is both. So on a Wilderfeast character, on a Wilderfeast character, you can acquire new traits by eating monsters, and you can acquire new techniques for your weapon, your tool, by taking downtime actions in town. Well, I'm going to get rid of that. And instead, you will gain traits by eating monsters, and you will gain techniques by completing heroic deeds. So, that's going to be the answer. So in theory, it's all diegetic. So it's going to be both. So in other words, if you want to get, I don't know, if you want to get the, we mentioned it before, but if you want to get the blubber trait, then you're going to need to find a monster who is frenzied, hunt it down, kill it, cook it, and eat it in a Wilderfeast. But if you have, let's say, the cleaver, and you want to acquire the surgeon's mark technique, then I will have developed, in theory, again, all of this in theory, I will have developed a deed tied to Surgeon's Mark that, after you do, something enough times, like, for example, if we read what Surgeon Mark does, it says it costs 5 stamina. It says choose a creature's part. That part loses twice as much durability when it takes part damage. This technique's effect ends when that part breaks or when you use this technique again. So in order to acquire this, we might have a deed that says, that you hit a part, but we could also have it be like you killed a part, right? You broke a part, which meant you reduced a part to 0 hit points, and that deed might have 3 circles on its track. So once your character has taken out 3 creatures' parts, you would acquire the Surgeon's Mark technique. So that's the idea. And we know that in the game, when your character goes to wounded 3, your character has to make a choice, right? You can either basically stay out of the fight, in which case you're fine, but you don't get to participate anymore, or you can keep fighting. And if you keep fighting at wounded 3 and you get hit one more time, you're dead. So presumably, you would have to, in fact, you would probably have to do that choice. I would probably say just once, right? Like if your character was at wounded 3 and you chose to fight on, I would say that, you would acquire the without fear of death technique, and so on and so forth. So it'll be deed based for sure. Could we also get sparks and shadows in there too? Well, maybe. I mean, the problem with Wilderfeast is that Wilderfeast isn't really a dungeon exploration game, so it doesn't really work out that well. There is an element, though, that I would probably end up cobbling together some elements of Legend of the Five Rings / one of the reasons I like Sparks and Shadows is because it reminds me of Legend of the Five Rings and its approach-based system, right? In Legend of the Five Rings, as a GM, I might know that if you make an earth-based approach for this action, the TN will be lower than the base TN. And if you tried to do, say, a water-based approach, the TN would be higher. And hopefully I communicate that through the description and through your understanding of what might be a good approach versus what might be a bad approach. And the same thing is true with Wilderfeast. Good night, Helmet. So as a GM, there might be a challenge, and right, the natural assumption as a player is you're just going to use the style that you're the best at, right? Which is the style that you have the most dice in. But as the GM, maybe I know that this particular approach of a mighty approach is actually very problematic. And thus I would give your characters disadvantage to any mighty approach. And remember, the way the game works is you roll a couple d6s from 1 to 5, depending on what your value is in mighty, precise, swift, or tricky. So if you have a precise of 3, you would roll 3 dice for precise. If you roll a 5 or higher on a d6, that dice is a success. But if you have disadvantage, this is part of the core rules of Wilderfeast, by the way, you need a 6, not a 5 or higher. You need a 6. If you have advantage, then you need a 4 or higher. So you could easily imagine a scenario where your character might have a 3 or a 4 in mighty. But if you need to get a 6 in order to get a success, it might be better for your character to use the precise approach, because the precise approach might have advantage and thus need 4s or higher. And so you having 2 dice in precise might actually give you, on average, better outcome than using your 4 dice from mighty. So. Well, thank you, Edenism. I mean, again, it's it's so much, it's so pointless because, I mean, I was looking at the GitHub repo. I mean, like, again, I don't actually have a job, right? So, I mean, my job is basically streaming and talking to people on Discord. So, in theory, I could go and try to, you know, make, and I do have a computer science degree, if we want to be technical. But I could try to make my own version of the game. You want to hear something terrible? I actually want to add a 5th style. I know it's terrible. Why, Derek? No. I mean, kind of, Shazbot. This would be the place to do it. Anyways. Right. Does it mega game? Does it D? That's now the 5th question. Again, I like diegetic. I like diegetic play. Yeah, but the problem is, so this is for approach. Luck isn't a very good approach, right? How are you approaching something, right? Are you trying to do it with precision and being careful? Are you trying to do it quickly and swiftly? Are you trying to do it with strength and force? Are you trying to do it with, you know, being kind of subtle and sly and sneaky, right? Luck isn't really, I think, a way to, you know, approach it. Now, why is the main reason I would add a 5th style? Well, Cinnabos got it right. The real reason I want to add a 5th style is because it lets me add 4 more tools. Correct. That's correct. We're doing good, Dr. Waits. We're hanging out. So, yeah, I mean, look, at Commander Snookums, I'm not underselling my success as a streamer. I'm certainly in the upper echelons. I mean, I'm no Mr. Beast, but I'm no XP to level 3. I'm no Ginny D, but, you know, I'm getting my bills paid. You know, it's not as comfortable a living as I would like it to be, but it's definitely, you know, it doesn't have the perks of employment, but I don't have a boss. So that's pretty sick. I don't have days off, but I also don't have to ask for days off. So, you know, there's pros and cons. Also, somebody said, we need to do a whiteboard. All right. We will whiteboard. Not Mr. Beast yet. Not Mr. Beast ever. I will never be that because I just don't have it in me to, you know, to be that, you know, business forward. I mean, Boothby, I've told you the story, right? About how when I was not a junior, when I was a senior analyst, I wanted to become a lead analyst. And they basically said, okay, we are going to create, we can't promote you because we don't have the budget to promote you. But we do have the budget to, if we create a new position, then that gives us the budget to make that position. We don't have the budget to promote you, but the budget to create a position comes out of a different budget. And I said, okay, cool. And they said, okay, so they made that position. And then they said, but in order to fund that position, we had to cut your position. And I said, wait a second, what? And he's like, but also you have to interview for it because it's an open position. And that means we have to hire, we have to post it externally and we have to have meet a certain number of quota. And we have to, and I was like, wait. So I have to interview for the position that you're giving me, that you're cutting my role for? I go, what if I don't get the job? And they're like, well, we'll cross that bridge if we come to it. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. So part of the reason for this was that in Oh no, Dr. Waits. This was a long time ago. This was like 2006 or something. This was 2000. No, maybe 2008, 2009. This was back when I worked at insurance. No, my most recent company just straight up laid me and half of the analyst teams off because of AI. Yeah. So in is my thing dead? Maybe my thing's dead. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's on. All right. In Wilderfeast, there are, by default, 4 styles, which are basically approaches, which are mighty, precise, swift, and tricky. Now, I should point out, too, that... Okay, my battery is low. I should point out, too, that one of the reasons I love approach-based design is because you can't tell me which, any one of these could be used for a diplomacy check. Any one of these could be used for getting through a locked door. Any of these could be could be used to secure, the alliance of a group of unruly street thugs, right? That's what I like about styles. Anyways, but in Fate Accelerated Edition, we have 6 approaches, they're called. And they are forceful, careful, quick, sneaky, clever, and flashy. And since there's such a one-to-one relationship between these, I thought, well, I kind of wanted to add a 5th style to Wilderfeast. And while flashy makes a lot of sense, I don't think flashy makes a lot of sense in the context of a monster hunting game. But I do think clever is a good, and I just think I like the word in general. Besides, I mean, come on. Who hasn't fought a monster and gone, clever girl, right? But what's cool about that is, as noted before, it takes us from, right, every tool in the game is a pairing between 2 styles. So in the base game, there's 6, and now there's 10. Clever is basically tricky, isn't it? I mean, it depends. Do you think sneaky and clever are the same things? I mean, tricky to me is, using deceit and, being, a roguey, McRogerson, using, sneaky sneak, and trying to, confuse them and mislead them and trick them. And clever, to me, is more of like, outthinking them, outsmarting them, using your brains and using your noggins. But that's just me. I don't know. No, yeah, flashy is a great. I mean, Fate Accelerated Edition works, I think, fantastic. I think it works great. Those 6 approaches, I think, really cover a lot of ground for sure. Anyways, there we go. So I did say, someone said we need to do the whiteboard. So there you go. There was the whiteboard. Actually, I owe somebody an update about that. Meanwhile, I need to figure out how I want to run the One Ring game with chat and do it in a way that is fun and manageable. And I'm not quite sure how I want to do that because I don't want it to be like a pain in the butt and I don't want it to slow down. I don't know if I should just use polls or if like people should like, I'm not sure. Like, I'm not sure how I want the audience to participate. You all are potential audience members. Like, the idea is that, right, it's a solo game. I'm a dwarf with a crew of dwarven allies that are kind of like pseudo NPCs, right? They're not like full characters. The only full character is your character. And you go on these missions into Moria in order to try to reclaim it from, you know, the vile orcs and darkness that wait there, right? And try to reclaim it all. And I think part of the fun idea of it is it's a solo game, but the idea is that I'd be doing it live, right? Instead of doing it pre-recorded or something. But I wanted, as much as possible, to try to figure out a way to include the chat. And now the game itself has a lot of tables, oracle tables, you know, we call them, to like roll to see what random thing might have happened or emerged. And I think part of the fun of it might be to let, right, the chat vote instead of just rolling on a random table. So like, if you're familiar with the Game Master emulator, one of the things that the Game Master emulator does is like, you ask it's pretty basic, but it's like, you ask a question like let's say you meet an NPC and you're playing a solo game. You might say, you know, does this NPC actually want to help us? Right. And you might go, yeah, I think there's a 70%, you know, like, I think he probably would want to help us. He's a little cautious and concerned, but I think he would. And then you look it up on the table and you go, okay, he has a 75% chance of wanting to help you, right? It's not locked in stone. So what I'm envisioning is instead of using like something like a Game Master emulator, is I can just pose that question to chat. I can just say, chat, you know, are we walking into an ambush? Now, part of the situation might be that, you know, I don't know, maybe, you know, the chat might always vote, you know, yes, which is good. I mean, right. I mean, at the end of the day, right, we want things to be exciting. And we want things to be exciting. We want things to be interesting, but in full transparency, I also want to create a way that I can kind of, you know, make it a little game showy and maybe make a little bit of money from it as well. You know, it is my job. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to balance that, because I don't want it to go, you know, I don't want it to be full wheel of pain and just, you know, let somebody come in and drop $200 and just completely, you know, I don't know, like, you know, 5 Balrogs jump out and, you know, gank Frodo on the way to Buckleberry Ferry or something, you know, like something completely ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. Boothby's already predicting the inevitable, right? So that's what I'm trying to figure out is like, how do I'm trying to figure out what the best way to do it, both from like a playability perspective and, you know, from a monetary perspective. You know, I don't want it to be, you know, grifter level, you know, I don't want it to be grifter level, but I do want it to be, you know, I want it to be fun. I want it to be engaging. Now, one thing we talked about this, I don't know why I'm getting it off of the fucking shelf. I have fucking PDFs. Okay, Moria. Wherefore art thou, Moria? Well, Edward, you hardly need that justification, so I appreciate your candor, though. Okay, here we go. My wife, the teacher, says, give the chat limited options that are acceptable. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Dr. Waits, that's a good piece of advice. I mean, the question is, you know, how to figure. I mean, like, because I mean, I think some of the idea would be like me right? When I'm playing a solo game, I'm the player and the GM, I guess. And I guess part of the thing is like me as a GM in that situation, I would have a natural reaction to say, ooh, that could be interesting. That could be interesting. That could be interesting, right? And if I was playing, say, a game of PBTA, if I had to make a hard move, I would probably pick one of those three options that I felt was going to push the game in a more interesting direction and give the players something really interesting to have to deal with. And I'd make that decision based off of those predicates. But in a solo game, it's a little bit tougher because I'm kind of biased, right? I'm making a decision for myself. So the option might be instead is like, as me as a GM, I might go, okay, you know, these are the three options that I would think of, but I don't get to pick, right? Chat gets to pick. So, interesting. There's a solo relay going on right now. Grouch Couch is hosting, same character, passed between different channels and different systems. Sometimes he does audience interactions in his solo plays. I don't know Grouch Couch at all. I'll have to check it out. So, like, one of the things that I know we talked about is when you play the solo game, when you play the solo game, one of the first things that you do is you build up your squad, right? And the band is what it's called. It's called the band. And the game gives you this, these are the sort of the shortened form for each member of your band, right? They get a name or a title, and you basically mark whether they're hardened or not. Basically means, are they leveled up or are they not? They get some kind of gift. They could potentially get a kingly gift. And then they get these injuries that can be, kind of stacked up. And then the quirks and notes is just pure, fluff and role playing. My idea is that as a member of the audience or a member of the Knights of Last Call Patreon, if you pay a certain amount of money, right, you can basically sponsor an ally, and you get to give them the name, decide what their quirks are, or what maybe some of their little notes and quirks are, and you get to basically make this. You get to kind of make you get to make a character in a very limited fashion, because these are very limited characters, that gets to join the Great Crusade to retake Khazad Dûm from darkness. And one of the truly, I'll say not horrifying, but one of the things that you can do with an ally in this game, which is very fun, is, I'm trying to find it where it is, but basically, if my character needs to make a roll and fails the roll, right, one of your allies can come in and can let you re-roll the roll, but the ally will probably die from a result of it, because basically, the idea is that they are coming in and basically you go, get out of here, I'll hold them off, giving you this opportunity to escape before the thing finishes. Where is that? Does anybody happen to have an encyclopedic knowledge of So, nope, that's not it. I don't remember where it was. But anyways, long story short, I mean, I'd have to really reread all of this rules. But yeah, when you gather your allies, you get to decide what they are. So normally you would roll for this stuff and everything like that. But if you sponsored, let's say Sunset sponsored an ally, they could decide if, they'd get the dwarf a name, and they could decide if, are they a goblin slayer? Are they a stone seer? Are they a prowler? Are they watchful? Right. And that would decide what their, sort of what their gifts are. Yeah, I know. Free League books are not always laid out in the best. They're beautiful. They are beautiful, but a lot of times the stuff is not where you would expect it to be, and it doesn't always make sense. But so yeah, I guess that's probably kind of what, generally speaking, we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And of course, then when you go out on a mission, you have to choose who's going to come from your band. So, sometimes we might only take a couple of members, right? Because if you take a smaller band, you get a penalty to your ability to basically to make war and to do battle, but you get a bonus to being able to basically maneuver and travel through Moria, essentially easier to travel with a smaller group. And then obviously if you go with a large band, the inverse is true. And the same thing is true with traveling light versus geared for war. And then depending on the type of people that you bring with you, you can get a bonus to these modifiers. So your band basically kind of gets aggregated into this one creature. I should also note that if you travel in a large group, you're also more noticed, right, by the powers of darkness that be, right? The eye awareness, as it is called, which is really cool. Very neat. And oh, here it is. Okay. When an ally utilizes their gift to lead, this is an ally, so these are the people that other people buy, to lead an action, it adds a bonus to the roll. Gifts can be used when the band acts together or if the gift wielder acts independently. Using a gift gives that ally a moment of focus in your story, a chance to show their quality, but it can also put them in harm's way. If you roll the Eye of Sauron when using a gift, that gift is wasted and no longer provides a bonus. So, nasty. And there's a similar rule later on for having to basically having your ally, help you out and try to, save you from a grievous wound or a grievous ally. Basically, if your allies help you, there's a chance that they can die, which is really cool. I'm a big fan of that. And what's neat about that is that, somebody might feel bad because, their character got dead. Yeah, but there it is, the telling table. This is basically the GM equivalent. So normally, I would just say, I would decide, oh, what are the odds that I get ambushed in this hall? And I would go, yeah, it's probably likely. And then I would roll the D12, and if I rolled a 4 or greater, the answer is yes. But instead, I could just, ask the chat with a poll. Now, my only concern is that will slow things down too much, but, it could be more fun that way. I mean, because there's a lot of people who do solo games, but how many of them, do it live and, with chat, I think that's, yeah. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And, of course, it's Derek. So, naturally, I want to take the graphic elements of Lord of the Rings, particularly the graphic elements of the Dwarven Moria book, right? Things like the sign of the House of Durin, right? Things like Kurth runes and Dwarven. Yeah, here they are. Here's some Kurth runes of Dwarven runes and Dwarven iconography. And I'd love to be able to make a cool, overlay, right? That looked, Tolkien-esque. Because that would be really cool. We don't, because this is the One Ring, a game that I don't think actually needs any such stuff for that perspective. I actually think this game works remarkably well on its own. One of the reasons I'm really impressed by this game is because of just how well it operates. Also, it's a solo game, so Deeds becomes less, interesting to me. What mission does Barleen have for me? I will roll the D12. I cocked. A 2. I will roll the D6. A 3. He wants me to chase. Oh, what aspect? A 6 and a 2. He wants me to chase a mighty... I'm assuming it's a focus, yeah. Oh, a 10-3. He wants me to chase a mighty... Wait, that doesn't make sense. A mighty wish. Is that really what that is? Oh, I guess it is. Chase a mighty wish. Well, I'm going to do... yeah, we had a tip goal for that at the end of last year, and so I'm going to be running the One Rings, the solo play in Moria, reclaiming Khazad Doom. And there's solo rules in this, which are made by Sean Tompkins, who wrote, Ironsworn and Starforged. Right. Clearly, it's some kind of wishing well or something like that, Mark Clore. But I'm like, the chasing part is the part that kind of threw me off a little bit, because that implies that it's a race. Maybe it is a race. I don't know. But the Tor discard has graphical assets, FYI. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, so Sunset Boulevard, I am an idiot and a moron, and I'm the type of person that would actually hire a graphic artist to make me a layout and have it incorporate, these elements and runes to make it look good and make it look cool. I always struggle with the idea, with positioning and how big should people be. You guys watch me a lot. When I'm doing the PDFs, is this proportion work? Obviously there's some wasted space here at the bottom because, PDFs are kind of a weird dimension relative to the size of the screen. But I don't know that my layout is exactly optimal, but especially for something like an actual play, a solo play. I've never done one of those, so I don't really know what other people do and how important it is to see dice and stuff. Because obviously, one of the things I would definitely want to have is a camera, mounted above, and I'd be rolling real dice, of course. So people could see, the dice being rolled and all this other stuff. But I don't know. And I always have my chat very big because my chat is a big part of the game, a big part of our stuff. And I like for people to be able to read the chat, and especially if the YouTube is in full size so you can actually see the chat. And of course, normally if we're doing it on Twitch, it also combines Twitch and YouTube chat into one. Yeah, I mean, we do I have any? Right, that was one. I don't remember what else we were using away. This was when we were doing something else. And then this won't be good because I don't have a green screen on. But this was the green screen one where the PDF took up the whole space and then I had a green screen. Anyways. Yeah, I mean, I still have my green screen, obviously. What I'm saying is, would it be better if the PDF or whatever we're primarily working on was that big? And the chat and all the other graphical elements, including my face, were either missing or much smaller. I don't know. That's what I don't know. It's kind of a balance between two things. I'm not really quite sure. Right. Or, yeah, I could just go, like you said, I could go full. Just go full Derek. Gigantic Derek. You can count my pores. There we go. True. People, well, Joe, I always do try to make sure that I like speak stuff and don't just rely on visual cues, because I know that a lot of people just listen. Interesting. Yeah, I guess it comes down to like, what is it that people actually need to or want to see, right? Now, I am at heart a gamist, okay? So what my instinct would be is, if I was watching this game, is I would want to see some sort of representation of the status, right, of every ally, you know? Like, and I'm crazy and I am an idiot and I understand this, but like in my mind, it would be cool to have like, I'm going to switch to a whiteboard, but imagine if it was not, you know, if it wasn't this, it was like, that was just the background. But like, you know, here in the corner, there we go. It's like, you know, there was some kind of, what the fuck is this? No, go away, Copilot. Nobody wants you. Nobody ever wants you. Ever. What is this? Why is this up? No, go away. I don't want Copilot. Can I ban this forever? It literally, okay, there it goes. It would not let me close it. So like, imagine if like, you know, you had like, I don't know, you know, the One Ring stuff is here, but then like here, we have like a circular thing, right? With like, you know, a dwarven character portrait, right? And then, you know, the ally's name is here. And then maybe, you know, the patron or the, you know, the person who sponsored the ally's name is here. And we have sort of a graphical representation of whether they're hardened or whatever, you know. And then we have, you know, a different ally, you know, here with his horned helmet and his big beard and his axe. You know, and he's got his little graphical element here with his name and again, the person who sponsored, you know. Because again, I want to give people a shout out, you know. So I like the idea of having a graphical representation of what's going on in the game, right? I don't want it to just be like all like me or, you know, just a screen full of dice. Like, as somebody who doesn't really watch actual plays, at the very least, I want to be able to like know what the status of things are, you know. And I enjoy, I guess, a HUD, for the lack of better words. I like a HUD, you know. So, right. I hate when actual plays layout don't have any info on the characters. Exactly. I'm kind of in the same buck. You know, you would think that people might actually like watching our channel, but they don't, obviously. But Lance of Last Call, Glass for Frozen Flame. Let me see if I can. So like, and you know, each day that passed. What the hell is that? All right, bring up my own theater mode. Bring up my own thing here.
My work day
of time. So like you can see here in our screen, right in the corner of the live stream, there's this stats block, right? It shows you how many hero points everybody has. It shows you what their current hit points are. It shows you what their AC is, you know, whether they have their shield, you know, raised or not. And boy, number one, doesn't Pathfinder 2, ladies and gentlemen, like everybody has AC 19. But you know, the idea was that we were trying to at least show, you know, the, you know, we were trying to show some of the Pathfinder 2 stats. And then we also had, right, I made up separately these 5 stats for the Broken Tusk clan, right? So that's the Broken Tusk banner. And there was the population, the morale, the food and the herd strength, right? And then as the characters took actions during the hex crawl, right, that would affect the population morale, food, and herd strength of the Broken Mammoth clan. And then meanwhile, on top of all of that, there was the, tip goal and who chatted or who tipped and who tipped what not. We had the Unleash the Beast that was to unlock Thrawn's mega rage or whatever. We had some fun stuff in there. But, I think showing stats and stuff, I think that is important. I think that's a cool part of the game. Yeah, Stan. I try to make that a big part of my Torchbearer, campaign as well, for sure. Jordan definitely had some great moments in that campaign, London. That is very true. So again, it's a classic Derek thing where like the stuff I worry about and the stuff that I want to put into a game is oftentimes very not aligned with what people, what other people seem to actually care about. But hey, it is what it is. I try to make something cool out of it, but. Sweet Threat says, I have a horrific idea for how to do these things. So either we should definitely do it or we should definitely not do it. All right, Sweet Threat. By the way, we're probably going to go to midnight. So we'll probably wrap up here in half an hour, FYI, if you want to hang out. I don't even know what time we went live. 2 hours ago. Okay. How am I enjoying my new internet provider? It's fantastic. Now, I will say, Edward, I bought a mesh network. I bought an Eero network, EERO. I haven't installed it yet, but the signal strength upstairs isn't as strong as I'd like it to be. So I bought a mesh network. I have to install it. Even though my condo isn't that big, like my studio room is about as diagonally far from my actual modem and broadcast point as possible. So once I get the Eero installed, I think it'll be a lot better, even though it's not problematic. It's not actually a problem. But if I go, speed test it, again, we're literally streaming. I mean, I've had 0 drop frames, which is awesome. And I'm streaming right now, and I have a download speed of 480 megabits per second, which is fantastic, obviously. And loading. I'm waiting for the upload. That's the most important one. I've got 420 megabits per second up. So I could be doing this in 4K right now. I could be doing this in 8K right now. But obviously I'm not going to, but what's up, Strat? Good to see you. Hey, Johnny Gabagool. Nice to see you. Yeah. Well, mine so far has been fucking great, so I'm here for it. Sweet Threats says, like newscasting segments or breaking news scrolling bars that pop up in response to things happening Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, I personally love that idea. I personally love that idea. 15 said I would probably use my Stream Decks. I have multiple Stream Decks. I have a lot of Stream Decks. Because again, if we look at the allies, right? The allies are a very simplistic character model. Right? They're either hardened or they're not hardened. Their gift is either wasted or not wasted. Same with their kingly gift. And then these statuses are incrementing, right? So injuries are incrementing. Fatigue is incrementing. So for each ally, I could just have a button on my Stream Deck, and I could just have one column be one ally. And so if an ally becomes severe, I would just hit injury, 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 and that would tick it up to severe. If they were faltering, I would just hit fatigue, fatigue, and that would, increment it. Or I could even have like increment up and increment down. So each ally would only be 4 or 5 buttons. So anyways, it wouldn't be that hard. All things considered, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, keep in mind, I used to GM PBTA while also live producing a live stream through my Stream Deck to from 7 different camera angles. So I'm pretty used to being on the ball. I have AT&T now. I had Spectrum for 25 years or something, and I finally canceled it because they never brought fiber to my neighborhood, and AT&T did. They installed it last summer, and they started offering the service this winter. And I got my line installed before 4-degree weather and 2 feet of snow permanently on the ground. So I was lucky there. Speaking of One Ring, since we've been talking about the One Ring, we could talk about Wilderfeast and One Ring. So somebody had a great idea on the chat. I wish I knew who it was. I cannot remember who it was in the Discord. But somebody had a great idea, which was to try to use the shadow or the fatigue system and use that for the Wilders' like humanity track. And I think that's a really, 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 really cool idea that I would love to play around with and sort of get something on it. Just because I think that system in the One Ring is like one of my favorite things. And for those of you who don't remember how it works, basically you have some sort of resource in the One Ring, like hope. And then there's sort of like an anti-resource, which is comprised of 2 values, a temporary one and a more permanent one. So in the case of like the hope, it is opposed by the shadow points and scars, right? And as long as your hope is greater than your number of shadows plus your number of scars, then your character is fine. But if your hope is less than your shadows plus scars, then you gain the miserable status, which has a game mechanic where now the Eye of Sauron is an automatic failure instead of it being a just counting as a 0. But what's cool about this as a GM is, you can there's like 3 different levers there, right? There's 3 different levers here. What's going on there? Because number 1, as a player, you hope is something itself that can go up or down, right? You can gain hope, but you could also lose hope. You can spend hope. You can spend hope to help an ally. You can spend hope to gain a bonus die. So, you want hope as a resource that you want to use. It's sort of like a very minimal, it's sort of like a light version of a hero point. Not quite the same as a reroll, but, it lets you add bonus dice, which is really cool. But if your hope goes too low, then potentially your character could become miserable because you've accumulated too much shadow and too much scars. And again, there's this idea of shadow and scars. One is temporary, one is more permanent, in that you can remove scars, but it's a much more lengthy, involved process that you can't just do, willy-nilly. Twomp Tag. There's a lot of games that use stress, so you'd have to be a little bit more precise about that, but potentially, maybe. What's really cool in the One Ring as well is that, like Blaze in the Dark. Yes, except I see what you're saying. Like, yes, it's a resource, but you also want to manage it. Yeah, the thing with stress, though, is like, I don't think you ever have to make like a stress test in Blades in the Dark. But there's a little bit of an element there of like gaining a trauma to a certain extent. But I don't think it's exactly a good analog is to Blades in the Dark. But, you know, as you play the game, your character will naturally accumulate shadow. You accumulate it from moments of despair. You accumulate it from moments of greed. You accumulate it from moments of dread and being exposed to the foul sorceries of the agents of Sauron. So part of the thing is that, yes, like your character does gain the ability to resist the shadow, but you're never really resisting the shadow 100%. It's really tough. And so, and you know, your experience is going to bring you into contention with all of these factors. And so your shadow points are naturally going to, you know, go up as the game progresses. But what's really cool about the One Ring is one of the options available to you is to have this moment of weakness, this moment of madness, right? Where you kind of give in to the burden of the shadow that's sort of weighing on you. And when you do that, I'm trying to see if I can find the actual documents that you guys can see. I mean, everybody here knows this. We've watched The One Ring a million times. But maybe you haven't. I don't know. Anyways, what ends up happening is, here we go, PDF. What ends up happening is when you have this moment with your shadow, if your shadow becomes too high and your shadow score ever reaches your maximum hope rating, you basically become corrupted by the shadow. And the only way that you can break out of this is to have this moment of madness. And when you do this, this is like Blades in the Dark in that it pushes you towards a sort of permanent character ending point. So I think it's just really neat, you know. And when you do that, by the way, you get to they remove all your shadow points. So like it's almost kind of advantageous to a certain extent because it lets you get this complete clear of all your shadow points. But again, you're going to be, you know, moving down this line towards becoming corrupted by the shadow. Anyways, the reason I like this for Wilderfeast is because I love the idea that as a wilder, your character is a human who is gaining these sort of monstrous traits in order to become more powerful so that you can try to save and protect the wilds. But I like the idea that your character, as they have these moments of weakness, that they risk becoming a monster, you know, through a series of steps, similar to a character in the One Ring sort of going down these steps of darkness. And I think that's a really compelling element of gameplay. And one of the things that I think is really cool about Wilderfeast is this idea that your character is both a human and a monster. And, you know, your monstrous side can be very powerful, but, you know, it can also make you lose touch with your humanity. And I think that's a really interesting space to play around with. But more than that, I love the idea that it gives us all these really cool levers as GMs and as players to a certain extent to manage, because we're going to be managing shadows. We're going to be managing scars. We're going to be managing hope. We're going to be spending hope. There might be an option available to us, right? Like maybe we can, you know, we're running out of food or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you know what? We're running out of food. We could sneak in to the town. I'm trying to find it here. We could sneak into the town and steal a bunch of supplies, right? Like the town says, get out of here. We don't trust dwarves and elves. The concerns of those races are not our concerns. We look to our own. We're not going to help you, right? People being closed-minded and people being terrible, and you're like, we're trying to save the world here, or at least try to save your village, and they won't hear it. And so you're like, man, maybe we should, we could overpower them. We could threaten them. We could steal what we need and be gone. Like the means justify, right? The ends justify the means, right? That's the idea. Like, think about the bigger picture here, right? If we don't get the supplies we need, we're not gonna be able to stop the orc army or whatever. And so your group might decide, yeah, we're gonna sneak in and steal the supplies that we need from these people. Well, in the One Ring, the ends do not justify the means. Or I should rather say, there's always a price. And so your character would gain 3 shadow points. Now, again, those shadow points could be, reduced and restored. It's Dwongtag. It's absolutely inspired. We talked a long length about both the Avatar balance track and the Mouse Guard and Torchbearer's nature score. It's the exact same thing, Dwongtag, 100%. And, in fact, the way I look at it is like Mouse Guard, right? You have this idea of the nature score representing your nature as a mouse and your nature as a heroic guard, guard mouse, and which is going to win, right? And you're kind of torn between the two. And it's important that you don't lose touch with either, because you can't be a mouse guard unless you embrace those elements that make you not a mouse. But if you lose touch with what it means to be a mouse, you're also kind of losing touch with where you came from and why you do what you do. And I think that's a really cool mechanic to explore. I'm a big fan of that. So anyways, this is the main thing I love about this entire system of the One Ring, by the way. And all in all, it's pretty dang great. I don't know Dark Souls 2 because I don't really play video games, but it sounds like it could be, maybe. Yeah, I mean, there's, it's the kind of the Frederick, right? It's kind of like the Friedrich Nietzsche quote, right? Like, be careful when you look into the abyss, right? Lest the abyss look back. I am always intrigued by the one of the precepts of Mouse Guard. Sorry. One of the precepts of Mouse Guard is that, it matters not what you fight, but what you fight for. And as a GM, whether I'm running the game or I'm running a mega game, what I'm much more interested in is why your character is fighting and what prices and what costs will your character pay and is willing to risk and willing to pay in order to achieve their goals. That is perhaps, and by the way, Burning Wheel, Torchbearer, Mouse Guard all do that extremely like that. And I think that's really, really interesting. Really, really cool. Well, Strat, the original, the first Wilder happened because their ally, a human, became infected with the frenzy, became a monster. They were starving to death, and then she killed the monster, who was her friend, and then she ate it. So that's literally how the entire element, how the whole rigmarole began, for sure. And there is, I think that there's, now to be clear, Strat, I think that one of the goals of the game is that there is a balance to be found, right? And that if you can find a way to make nature be harmonious, that there is a way for monsters and humans to coexist, which is kind of where the idea of, harmony comes from. Now, to be clear, the idea of Monster Hunter Wilderfeast is that there are basically capitalistic forces in the world. The people of Charter, the giants who want to consume and hunt and want to destroy nature, right? And the reason why this is kind of a dilemma is because the Wilders also understand that the frenzy, which is this curse virus, does make monsters into real threats. But monsters aren't the problem, right? Frenzied monsters, right, are the problem. But that's also what Wilders deal with. That's actually what Wilders eat. If you eat a non-frenzied monster, you don't get your permanent mutations. You only get it when you encounter with a frenzied monster. So there's this idea that like the Wilders are sort of forced to kill monsters that they would rather not kill, which I think is kind of where that element of the game kind of comes in. Now, to be clear, they make it very nice for you. Like if the game didn't have the frenzy, it would be a lot more, teeth gnashing, right? Like in the One Ring, they're not trying to like, tempt you with the shadow per se, right? They're simply saying that along the road to being a hero, all characters will gain shadow. And part of what you're doing, it's not set up as like a yin yang, like, embrace the shadow, embrace the dark side. It's not, they're not assuming that your character is going to become like a gray Jedi or something like that. What I'm simply trying to say is that in the process of saving people, or in trying to find harmony between humans and nature, the Wilders have to be very careful about the path that they walk, because if they embrace too much of the wildness and the madness, they could become subject to the frenzy, which is again how the first Wilder was born. There's a story where basically there's two companions, they survive the apocalypse, one of them gets infected with the frenzy, becomes a monster, her companion eats her, kills her, eats her, and gains her strength. And that's how the Wilder that's how the story began. It's a little extreme, but it is what it is. So there's kind of this idea of, right, even the game itself has this idea that monster can mean a lot of different things. Like in the game's introduction, it talks about how that the world of Wilderfeast is a land of monsters. It's monsters in terms of, gigantic fire-breathing, dragon-like creatures, gigantic, massive desert lizard creatures, right? Monsters. But also monsters dressed in their finery, right? Cold-hearted councils partition the horizon with cold eyes, abacuses clicking as they calculate yields of grain and meat. Silk robe merchants pay the starving and desperate to poach the last members of a vanishing species. And every season, the trains haul away hundreds of prisoners for the distant giants to eat alive. Right? So this idea is like monsters don't have to be, big kaiju. Monsters can be people. Monsters can be, basically, the man, right? The powers that be, late stage capitalism. And then monsters are also you, right? Freakish and grotesque. As the curse virus called the frenzy spreads, the mutated rangers called Wilders fight to maintain the harmony between humanity and nature. They kill the creatures they must, nurture the ones they can, and consume the ones they fail to save. And in doing so, they transform into half-human chimeras. For like all monsters, they derive their power from the one law of the one land. You are what you eat. And so one of the ideas is that if you eat enough of something, you become that thing. It's like, that's not like a metaphorical thing. Like in this world, this is literally like the metaphysical reality of this world. If you eat enough of something, you become that thing. And so, wilders, when they eat a bunch of monsters, definitely, I think, run the risk of becoming a monster. Yeah. But anyways, I say, yeah, I mean, I think it's more of like how monstrous you have become and what is the price for that. I mean, yes, also people don't really read the rules of the game at all. True. It is midnight. I have some thoughts. I need to put it into the Patreon channel, but basically, it's also kind of a fail-safe, because in the game, as written, there is no limit to the number of monstrous mutations that you can gain. And that's not really too much of a problem if you're like, playing once a week and, you have a GM who's managing your 3 or 4 PCs that are playing the game. But in a mega game, that could get out of control really quick. And so one of the things that I want to experiment with is the idea of like, that there's a sort of practical upper limit to the number of mutations that you have, while, without risking potentially, losing some of your elements of yourself. Yeah, something like humanity versus mutations, frenzied mutations, and yeah, I mean, I have some ideas, but it would basically work a little bit like the One Ring, where you would have this, kind of as you accumulate more and more monstrous mutations, it would become easier and easier for your character to become discordant, which is the primary condition that you get when you're when your character is, there we go. Normally, if you run out of harmony and you fail a test when you went wild, which meant embracing your monstrous side, if you fail, this type of failure represents a rift between your human side and your monstrous side. Perhaps you ignored your monstrous instincts, or perhaps you gave in to them without thinking. The more these failures accumulate, the more you, a human animal with inhuman mutations, feel like a stranger within your own body. If harmony decreases while it's at 0, it instead stays at 0, and instead the wilder who caused harmony to decrease becomes discordant. And when you have discordant, your thoughts and your instincts are now in conflict. You have disadvantage on all tests. So in the core game, there's this idea that if you like get out of whack with your human side and your monstrous side, that you basically become discordant, which gives you disadvantage on all your tests. And so this very much feels like being miserable to me from the One Ring. And so I think that there's a very similar, kind of analog between the two of that. So that's something I want to probably explore as well. I think it's interesting, especially because, again, in the core game, harmony is a party resource. Well, that doesn't work for a mega game. By the way, it's a party resource that persists from session to session to session. It really only resets when your party has a Wilderfeast. But that doesn't work in a mega game, because in a mega game, there is no party. You have a different group of people every time. So having this idea of a party harmony doesn't really make sense, especially if you did, it would only be for that session, because at the end of the session, your party breaks up. So this is the one thing that we have to change the most for a mega game. And my idea, instead of making it a party resource, I'm going to make it a personal resource that is influenced by the region or the area that you are in. In other words, there's sort of, two different ideas that will in fact, they won't even use any of these mechanics basically at all. I mean, it'll still probably use discordant, but this idea that if you are in an area of the game, a region of the game that has a high level of harmony. So let's say that, I don't know, let's say that the Cindervale Woods, which is a region, the actions of the community the actions of the community have raised the harmony of the Cindervale Woods from a baseline of 3 to 5. To me, this means that when your character is in the Cindervale Woods, right, the Cindervale Woods are a better example of humans and monsters living together. It's really what it comes down to. And so if your PC, your Wilder, goes and adventures in the Cindervale Woods, they will find that they are able to better maintain the balance between their humanity and their monstrosity, because this sort of represents kind of an ideal of, humans and nature living in coexistence and living in thing. So from a metagame perspective, from an in-game perspective, the goal of the Wilders is to increase the harmony of regions, probably to 6. 6 might be like the highest. Because, that means that, dogs and cats are living together, everybody's singing Kumbaya, humans and monsters everybody's getting along and everything's great. It's eco paradise. So that's like the narrative reason. And it kind of means you're winning the game. But from a metagame perspective, it means that your characters will be able to, have way more monstrous mutations and traits and crazy nonsense on your character because you can handle it more. Now, alternatively, if there's a region that has a harmony of 1 or 2, right? Nature is out of whack, right? The balance between man and nature, the balance between the communities is all amiss. And that tension in this region, maybe in the Tangle Fens, the Tangle Fens is a bad spot, right? The Charter has built a new factory. Several of the populations of monsters have been pushed to the brink of extinction. It's just not a place. The one community of humans that are there have begun, hunting animals because they are hunting this one breed of monster because they think they're dangerous. They've been lied to. They think that they're a threat. So the harmony here is really. It as a Wilder, you can feel this. And so as a Wilder, if you go into this region, now to be clear, this is a region that needs help. It needs your help. Because if it gets to 0, it's almost like you lose. But a Wilder who has themselves a ton of different wild versus human type things is going to find themselves much more much more difficult to maintain their, sanity, right? And avoid becoming, as the game calls it, discordant, right? So if you're a human who has racked your body with all sorts of monstrous mutations, right? You find it relatively easy to go adventure and do stuff in the Cindervale Woods where everything is harmonious, and you find it very difficult to maintain your concordance when you're in the Tangle Fence, which has a harmony of 1. Strat says, man, Wilderfeast is definitely among the queerest games featured on this channel so far. When you say queerest, do you mean as in homosexuality, or queer as in not the usual thing that we would cover? Because we have definitely covered gayer games than this. I don't think this game is particularly gay in that respect. Snookum says, it's a complex way of saying, in a world dominated by prisoner's dilemma, let's change the majority of prisoner's choice to cooperation rather than dissent. Yes, Commander Snookums, that is correct. I want it to. I want all the one of the main goals is I want every PC's number one priority to be raise harmony. Now, your characters may have different secondary goals. Those could differ. But you know, yeah. One of the problems that we have sometimes run into with our mega games is we create a situation, is that, you know, we create a situation where players, you know, we don't have that many PCs. You know, when we play Pathfinder 2, a massively popular game, you know, we might get 50 to 80 players. You know, something like this is, you know, we'll be lucky if we have 20. And so when you suddenly say, hey, 10 of you are team red and 10 of you are team blue. Oh, by the way, you all have to still adventure together and play together. Also, your guys are going to be running games for each other and GMing for each other. It can create a lot of angst and weirdness and tension, and it's cool. Like I agree, it's really fun. And if I had a 200 person mega game or something like that, and I could put 100 people on a team red and 100 people on a team blue, and you know we could let them duke it out. I mean, that'd be cool, but I don't have that. So one of the things that we have learned is that while I think it's okay for people to have different secondary or tertiary goals, the number one goal here should definitely be, you know, raise harmony. And that way, because again, too, remember in this game, you're not just some random person, you know, you're not just a PC, right? And in normal D&D, you're just, you know, you're just some person. But in Wilderfeast, you are a wilder with a capital W, which means that you were indoctrinated into this, you know, sort of sisterhood or brotherhood. And you did it because you care about harmony, right? You were willing to mutate and change your body. Not like they're, you know, the idea of like being a wilder who, you know, is like, I'm in it for money, you know, it doesn't really exist in per se, you know? So it's like there's other RPGs, right, where the PCs are all like part of the same team. So you're not just some random character. You are a wilder. That right? You are a special elite group who, you know, works together in this respect. So the idea that you would be a character who didn't, you know, wasn't on team, whatever, wouldn't really exist. I don't know, Zetrum. I mean, one of the things that's always interested me is what people care about, and what they come up with. You know, maybe your character really wants to run a candy shop. Maybe that's really what your character wants to do. You know, maybe your character really wants to, you know, discover the mysteries of the Waygates. Cool. I mean, you know, there's different things to do. We try to give people options, you know, but a lot of times this comes down to players taking an interest in the world and deciding to run with it, you know. Right. You could try to have the most awesome kaiju chili. Yes. I mean, to be clear, I haven't read the quick start rules, ironically, but you know, I mean, the creator I think is non-binary, so I mean, I wouldn't put it past the game. I mean, I think the pantheon, the sort of the Zeus and Hera of the pantheon were two females, you know, that were married together. So, I mean, I definitely think that that's definitely queer friendly, but it's true. Dwam Tang. I mean, that's literally what Monster Hearts does, right? Monster Hearts, the game of monstrous teenagers, is literally an allegory by the author who, at the time of writing the book, was transitioning, and used the idea of becoming a monster while trying to hide who you were as an allegory for being queer or being trans. So, right. You're Zeus, transform into a goose, and cuck a king. That's exactly right. But I mean, to be fair, Strat, I mean, I think, blue mages and blue magic has been a thing for a long time. And certainly the core things that inspire the game are the video game Monster Hunter and the anime Dungeon Meshi, which is literally an anime about people who go into a dungeon to kill monsters and eat them in fun and delicious ways. So, I mean, the whole, like, you know, eating a monster to gain powers, I think is also pretty kind of coded into certain elements of, I don't know, JRPG, fantasy, or JRPG and anime culture about it. But I mean, it's possible there could be an allegory there about, you know, being different and being strong because of your difference. But I don't know. I think the game is really cool. I love how diegetic it is, and I think it raises interesting questions, and I'm more keen to explore those, especially in a mega game. You get to explore things that you don't normally get to explore in a regular game because you have such a diverse group of people who can explore different ideas, which I think is really cool. Anyways, to be determined. To make the game work, I would definitely need to do some sort of something better than just Google Sheets. That's for sure. The one thing I have learned from running mega games for the last 4 years and all that other stuff is, like, people hate tracking stuff. Actually, if we want to talk what it's coded, it's very anti-capitalist. It's very, very much, it basically sees, like, you know, billionaires as horrible, right? They literally eat people. You know, their greed, the corporation, which is called the Charter, is evil. It's spreading everything. It's ruining everything. If anything, the game is very anti-capitalist, you know, in the sense of, like, corporations ruin everything. Maybe not anti-capitalist, but definitely anti-corporation, right? Anti-big business. Because part of the idea of the game is that there's this basically master corporation called the Charter, and they have basically, they're like Chom for Dune nerds. They're like the Uber corporation that rules everything. And part of the idea of the game is that they're also kind of ruining everything. And there's this implicit idea that they might even be the cause or the spread of the frenzy, right? And so maybe inadvertently, but maybe deliberately too. You know, it's kind of, you know, to be determined by your group and your GM or whatever. But there's definitely this idea that, you know, technology and unmitigated greed is bad. And they represent that, right, through hunger, right? Which is the kind of this idea that eating gluttonous, eating more than your fill, consuming. It's kind of like, that's basically the big bad of this game, which is so. Anyways, there's definitely there's definitely that stance in the game for sure. I would hesitate to call it anti-capitalist. Actually, I would call it anti-corporation. That being said, the game also has in its core form no money, which is something that gets brought up a lot on the Reddit, even though there's not that many people on the Reddit. But for the number of people that are on the Reddit, the fact that there's no money, there's no currency, there's no exchange of goods, there's no prices for anything in the book, there's nothing really to buy in the book, has kind of let people like going, So that's one of those, like, you know, not Is that a statement or is that a fruitful void? I'm not quite sure. Right. I mean, that's true that you do have a stat called the Horde, and you roll it to see if you can buy something. So, but anyways, what I'm particularly interested in about the game is the idea that if we do it correctly, that your characters will be motivated to, I can see that too. More anti-oligarchy. Yes. Yes. Although there is kind of inventory, right? When you have capital I ingredients, which you can acquire as you adventure, which you can use to make delicious, succulent meals. Which is another great mechanic, which I, by the way, completely love, which is that basically you combine different ingredients together, and that creates a meal. And a meal heals you, and it's basically the only way that you can heal in the game. But it also gives you buffs. It can buff your stats, it can buff your traits, it can give you temporary abilities. Like if you eat, I don't know, like if you eat flying fish stir fry, right, you might heal 6 and gain flying. And what's cool is you persist the flying until you eat another meal. But meals are how you heal. There's no like cure light wounds in this game. So it's kind of cool because, you can change up your meal that you eat and kind of like, temporarily switch up buffs, but it's also how you have to heal. So like your character might not want to eat a meal because then they'll lose their flying, especially if it's a rare ingredient, right? Like you might have had a really nice meal, right? Like some sort of like a 3-star Michelin super meal that was made by some really awesome player or something like that gave you like +3 to a stat or something like that, right? So like it raised your stat from 2 to 5, which is the max in the game. That means instead of rolling 2d6, you roll 5d6, right? That's massive. It's huge, obviously. I mean, it'd be like raising your strength from like 16 to like, 28 or something like that in D&D terms. But then you're like, damn, I don't want to have another meal. Like I want to ride that out as long as I can. But eating food is also how you, number one, eating meals and snacks is how you heal your stamina. But eating meals is also how you can regain your harmony, right? And part of the idea, in my mind, but also in the game's mind, is that when you sit down, not to have a snack on the go, but when you sit down and have a proper meal with your companions, right, that sort of pulls you back from the monstrous brink, right? It restores your sort of commitment and reminds you of why you're doing what you're doing. So meals and snacks are very important because not only do they heal your stamina, which is your hit points basically, but it also how you regain your harmony, which again is also very important. But a good meal or a good snack can give you a really sick buff, especially if it's from like a rare ingredient. And you might be like, that's kind of a tough spot to be in because you're kind of like, do I want to keep eating this? In fact, the game talks about the gameplay pattern where your group of PCs might engage a monster in combat, do some damage, PCs start to go down, the PCs flee, PCs eat some meals to regain their strength or to gain new buffs. The PCs re-hunt the monster, and then the PCs re-engage a second time. So there's actually an idea of like, you're almost supposed to like fight a monster and be like, oh man, we're getting kind of, we've done some damage, but we're kind of getting our butts kicked. We need to retreat. We need to regroup. We need to, eat some meals and regain our strength. And then we need to go track the monster back down and re-engage the monster and, try to finish it off. This is actually they even talk about this play pattern in the book. So, managing your meals and your ingredients, there is rules in the book if you want to be vegan, because they understand that not everybody wants to, whatever. Do you have to hunt for ingredients? Yeah, partially. I mean, you can find them, you can forage them. In a mega game, I would love for people to be able to have like little farms or little gardens. I think that would be a lot of fun. Is your obsession with Wilderfeast your clever way of saying you want to do a cooking stream? Well, no, but I do love cooking and I love baking, and I think it's really important. So we didn't even talk about this, London. So one of the ideas that we have is that I want to make, again, in the core game, harmony is this stat that sort of represents everything. It represents how connected you are as a group, how connected how connected you are as a group of player characters together. A pack is what they call it. But also like how focused and how in touch with your inner balance you are. It even represents the harmony of the world. It's doing a lot of lifting in the main game, which is fine because it's just one group of PCs. In my game, I want to make harmony both regional, aka like a mega area, but also individual. And for me, right, losing harmony is this idea that your character is, losing touch with their, with who they are, and they're, becoming more and more monstrous, and they're becoming discordant, which is what the game's status is. So there's a lot of ways that you can recover this in the game and stuff like that. But we're in a mega game. And so one of the ideas that I have is that one of the ways that a PC might recover their harmony is through chatting in Discord with their fellow PCs. In other words, the kind of, pointless role-playing that a lot of people really love that stuff, right? Yes, diegetic harmony, exactly. You are quite literally, talking with your fellow wilders, and you're sharing your stories, and, you're doing this. But you're also reminding yourself, yes, chatting in character, presumably Zipper Fist, yeah. One of the things that we've had in our mega games for a long time, in fact, we did not have them. They were not in Dragontide because Dragontide was created by Bob. So they didn't have them. But one of the things that all of our mega games have had are these RP channels where people can go and talk and chat in character. And they're very popular. And we didn't have them in Dragontide. And people were like, saying, hey, I missed those. I would like to have those. And so normally, in fact, in some of our games, we even award, in fact, Strat, who is here or was here, Strat wrote a bot that basically awards people a form of experience points for chatting in character in various channels. But this game doesn't have experience points. So one of the things that we could do instead is basically say like, hey, if you go and spend time and chat with your fellow players, then you again, one of the things I'm really going to do with this game is trust people. It's like, yes, if you abuse it and we figure it out, we'll just, kick you out. But like, if you engage in a good faith conversation in character with other players, that will heal part of your character's, harmony, because your character is quite literally reconnecting with their companions, with their friends, with their community. And that's what it means to have harmony. It means to be part of a community. It means to find each other, and it means to find strength in your differences and to share your pains and to share your successes and your triumphs. And I like the idea that that is reflected in both ways, Good to know. Good to know. We will probably need to do something for sure. Oh, okay. You're talking about for RPG Stage. I was like, who the hell is Randall? Yeah, I honestly, London, I have no idea. There was a little bit of drama in Play by Post that's the only thing I was aware of in the last year. And I did what I had to do. And, then I haven't really been engaged otherwise. I'm assuming you probably heard about the drama. When you have play-by-post drama, it's a thing. But okay, okay. Good to know. Anyways, I just like the idea that I want to reward people for doing the things that are fun, and I know that people love to. A lot of people love to chat and play their characters offline in character, and that's great, and that's really fun. Similarly, one of the things that Wilderfeast kind of asks you to do, and I don't really want to do this during the session because I think it is a little bit, it would just take up too long. And by the way, I should also note that one of my goals is to have Wilderfeast sessions in the mega game be short, right? To be like not maybe 1 hour, but like 2 to 3 hours. Like a 4 or 5 hour session is going to be a rarity. Because again, remember, this isn't Pathfinder 2. You're not trying to have a dozen encounters. You're not trying to grind through a bunch of resources. You're not trying to have multiple, whatever. It's going to be like, a hunt and a fight. And so I'm trying to keep the sessions a little bit shorter. But one of the things that the game really encourages you to do, in fact, the game even has random tables for it, is this idea of creating recipes. And, here's a recipe for fishball noodle soup with winter vegetables. And, you can see here that there's a mechanical element to the game, but also a mechanical element to the fish. But also, first you grind the kingflower seeds and make it to dough. While the dough is resting, mince up the wingfish. Combine it with the leftover flour to make fish bowls. Roll out the dough and cut them into thick noodles, right? Boil a pot of water with broth, aromatics, and sauces. Cook, blah, 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 pour and serve. I want players, as their PCs, to be rewarded and inspired and encouraged to make recipes. And I want, as a community of mega game players, for us to literally create a mega game recipe book, right? Like season 1's recipe book, right? And yeah, maybe maybe bonus points if you create like a real world equivalent, obviously we don't have wingfish, but maybe there's some sort of equivalent that you could put in. So, I want people to be like fussing over their recipes and all this other stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that I think would be fun to do. It's almost like meta game type stuff where I want people to be like, oh yeah, I'm sharing my recipe with the community. And I'm like, cool. Okay, write out the recipe. If you want to get your reward or your bonus, I want you to write out the recipe. I want you to make it look nice, maybe find a real world dish, a piece of art, or use, AI or whatever to, make up a fake dish. I'm not encouraging anybody to go hire an artist to draw a fake dish, but, you find a real world equivalent dish or whatever like that. Add it to your post, add it to your recipe, make it cool. And don't just be like, don't make it soulless. Like, restore 8 stamina, gain +3 mighty. No, you don't get anything for that. No, you need to write out the recipe, write out the steps, write out the ingredients, write out the processes, and, absolutely, Zetrum. Once the recipe is made, people can make it, you just need to, acquire the ingredients. So, if you have 4 kingflower seeds, 1 wingfish, 2 pepper cabbages, and a 100-year sprout, you can make that, So I love baking, and much more than cooking. Obviously, I love baking, but yeah, I think this is fun, and I want to. So I want to make the game more than just a boss fight, because at a certain level, kinda, right? Wilderfeast is kind of a game where it's like you kind of make some skill checks. If you want to be really, really harsh about it, you make a couple skill checks and then you do a boss fight. I think Strat says earlier, yeah, it's literally a monster hunt, which is a term from old NR where players would just get together to go hunt a monster. Guess what? That is this the game. So, which is cool. People love doing that, but I think we can make the game bigger than that and more cool than that by kind of leaning into these other tropes, which I think is fun, and making it more than it just this level up and grind type thing, but to make it this fun process. And I'd love to see, like I said, fun recipes. People can make recipes for baked goods, for meals, for breakfasts, for lunches, for dinners, for candy, desserts, sweets, pastries. We could have fun with that. So yeah, I mean that's basically where I'm at with it. I think it'll be fun. And I love cooking and I love all that other stuff. So, all right, folks, 12:34, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I am out. Tomorrow is a Super Bowl, and historically I have always done a Super Bowl stream. So I don't know what we'll do. I have jokingly talked about now for a while that I was going to read the it kind of started off as a joke, but then I was like, I was going to read basically cover to cover the AD&D second edition player's handbook. So instead of watching the Super Bowl tomorrow, maybe we'll just read the AD&D second edition player's handbook. This is like the most Knights of Last Call thing ever, by the way. Only because this is the edition of D&D that I technically started with. This was my edition of D&D that I started with. Everyone loves third edition. A lot of people played Pathfinder 1 or third edition or 3.5. And even if you don't, like, fifth edition is very similar to third edition in many ways. And a lot of people love AD&D first edition, it's the OG, So second edition, is kind of like my opportunity to be like, let me share with you my edition of the game, and what I grew up, playing and what I grew up learning, and we could see all the fun little intricate things. So, sell it as a Baldur's Gate tutorial stream, right? I didn't say BG3, right? Learn the secrets behind Baldur's Gate. That is not false advertising. It's totally clickbait, but for those of you who don't understand what that means, what Strat meant is Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 both used AD&D second edition as their game engine. Obviously, Baldur's Gate 3 uses a variant sort of 5th edition D&D, but Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 used AD, along with Icewind Dale, Planescape Torment, used AD&D second edition. But yeah, we can have fun, like pointing out how haste magically ages you a year every time it gets cast on you. And that when you reach middle age as a human, you get -1 to strength and con, but +1 to your int and wisdom. So was there a meta where mages would cast haste on themselves a lot so that they could get older, so that they could gain int and wisdom? Yes. By the way, if you ever wanted to see, like, I love, one of my favorite things too is like as editions go on and on and on, as elves become less and less and less Tolkien-like. And at this point in second edition, elves were still fairly Tolkien. You can see that they started at, maybe roughly 120, 130 years old. They could live to as late as 700 years old, 600 years old. But note, they don't die. Rather, they feel compelled to migrate to some mysterious other land, departing the world of men. So elves were still very much immortal in AD&D 2nd edition. Yeah. Good stuff. Interesting, Zipper Fist. That is interesting. I did not read that game or did not read that book. So this is what we might be doing tomorrow, which is really funny because a lot of the things in this book are basically going to be like, oh, it's like this in 1st edition, but they changed it in 2nd edition. Ye Ranger, who in 2nd edition inexplicably gains the ability to fight two-handed with no penalty to his attack rolls. Gee, I wonder why, especially considering they never had that ability ever. Not to mention, they talk about Robin Hood, Orion, Jack the Giant Killer, and the Huntress of Diana. What does any of that have to do with dual wielding? Gee, I wonder what something must have happened in the mid-'80s that made the idea of a dual wielding ranger very popular. Wonder what it could be. All right. Anyways, so we might be doing AD&D 2nd edition instead of Super Bowl. So, all right, folks. I will maybe see you tomorrow. Should be good. Otherwise, check us out on Patreon. We love you. Again, you guys are awesome, and let me do stuff like read the AD&D 2nd edition handbook and obsess over a really, really, really obscure indie RPG like Wilderfeast, or try to run a One Ring, game. I know, Cinnabus, that's the part that bothers me the most. Not just a fighter. He was a drow. It was actually specifically a drow thing. It wasn't even a fighter thing. It was a drow thing. Drow in AD&D 1st edition had the ability to dual wield. It was a racial thing because they were so awesome. So that's why. Anyway, whatever. It doesn't matter. But yes, Dritz was a fighter. That's where he got good at fighting. And he became a ranger much later on, and his dual wielding had nothing to do with it. I'll point it all out tomorrow. I was going to say, also, if you read the Crystal Shard, which is the first appearance of Dritz Duerden, he uses a spear. He uses 2 swords. He uses a spear. He uses a bow and arrow. When they fight Icing Death, okay, the big white dragon, Dritz doesn't even have Icing Death yet. He got that scimitar from that dragon. So Dritz is using a bow and arrow in that fight. It's actually a really, really cool fight. But anyways, all right, I'm out. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. See you next time on Knights of Last Call. Peace.